Oh man, fucking the recording's already started, but they didn't call me at 8 a.m. I had to call them like half an hour later. It was fucking terrible. I feel like
Oh
fucking
boy.
shit. All right.
Well, now we're here for a video. Hello, everybody. We are back for what is basically the part two response slash debunk of Twin Twin reviews video.
Let's hope
Uh,
it's the last one.
okay, so obviously, if you watched the first part, or even if you tuned into it, or even if you just looked at the video title, you're aware that it's 2 minutes, uh, or not 2 minutes, it's 2 hours, and it goes over just the first 5 to 6 minutes of his video,
Yeah.
simply because he throws in this giant schlock of tons and tons and tons of questions. I think there's like maybe 3 dozen different questions in it that we had to answer
There was at least
and
more than
explain.
20. Yeah, for sure. There was a shit ton of questions he just throws out at the beginning, and a lot
Which
of
a
them
lot
are
of them,
explained in the fucking game itself.
yeah, some of those I don't mind answering a bunch of those, like one or two of them, or three or four of them at a time from one person. Having all of them answered from one person is kind of insufferable because it makes me wonder. It's insufferable in the sense that he has claimed that he played the first 5 games, which I can understand some of these questions being there if you just played those and you didn't read any of the mangas, which I said you have to read them. That's technically not true. 1 and 2, you just have to know that they're all canon. You don't have to read 3, 4s, and 5s novels to understand 3, 4s, and 5 story. If you want to completely understand it and understand what you're talking about in the greater depth of like DMC's world building, it is necessary for you to do that. But you don't have to do that to understand the core of that story. However, it is relevant.
I would say
I'm just saying.
I would say you would probably need to read Forge's novel to get the core of the story. Like I guess the main points are in the game itself, but there's so much shit that wasn't in the game on the novels, and the novels are canon. So that means the novelization is the canon events of DMC4, and that there's a lot of shit there you miss if you just play the game for some fucking reason.
Yeah. There
But
is the downside that sometimes they have inconsistencies, but that's just part of it. It's
that's
just
just
only a
one less in
couple.
the corner.
We'll get into that later. I would say that it's still very important to do this. These reviews are going to be out longer than they are for a longer time than they will be right now, meaning in the future, in the following years and so, Visions of E will be finished, and all these different secondary materials that have been here, all the novels, they'll be on the internet. So if someone, like I said in the previous video, if someone makes a review from this point forward, from like a year past DMC or forward, they have access to all this information if they choose to be invested in the series. Yes, I can understand if they wanted to say that DMC5 specifically as a game doesn't explain this, but that's not a mark against the game. That's not a mark against the series or the franchise or the game by extension. If you have all of this information explained in source material from various stuff that you're expected to read, like you don't have to, but you are expected to read it.
All right.
Um,
Yeah, no, like I mean, I don't think you need to read the material specifically unless you're critiquing the story or the lore. Like if you're going off of gameplay, obviously you don't need to read the
oh
material.
yeah, definitely. But he's making complaints about the story,
Yeah,
so for that
no,
reason, I say like it's
yeah, no.
necessary.
For but to be fair, he does at the very least imply he has read Before the Nightmare, so he does have some background knowledge for this
That's
game.
good. It's just
It's like it's not
didn't
good
read
enough. Where's
didn't
the
read
other?
Visions of V and the manga of 3, which are just as important, if not, I would argue, more important than Before the Nightmare.
I don't know. Before the Nightmare sets up several retcons and like explains a lot of the mythology in DMC and where a lot of people go. So
No, I'd say Visions of V is like more imperative because as far as 5 is concerned, 3's manga is very important as far as 5 is concerned because it literally demonstrates that Virgil cares about Dante and his goals to getting into DMC3, as well as like his knowledge that of Mundus and his existence, which like generally that explains what his place in the story as far as an antagonist is, and as far as people referring to him as a villain, and Dante's point of view identifying him as a villain, which is relevant to 5. So Like those are all very real. I can understand at face value, a lot of people might not pick that up, but after a couple reads, oh.
After a couple reads.
So we're going to be starting at around the 6 minute mark, right after he finishes the last spiel of questions.
Yeah, we're gonna be starting like immediately after the questions because he drops a shit ton of just like he starts overlapping his questions. Good effect, but not exactly easy to react to. So Mangler wanted to start at the 6 minute mark for some reason. I wanted to start at the 8 minute mark. He's something about
Yeah.
personal spiel. So
He goes, yeah, he goes into some follow up statements about his questions to provide clarification before he gets into those main points. We'll go over these things real quick. I won't be slow. I won't be. I'll be faster.
all right, so let's start.
Frustration really does come from a place of love, but along with my OCD desire for everything to make sense, what really makes DMC5 such an obsessive head scratcher for me is discovering how little effort almost every aspect of this game seems to have had outside of the graphics and the fighting engine. For a game that I was hoping would like really knock my socks off and prove me wrong, the end result is kind of insulting.
Okay, so little effort on everything but graphics and gameplay. 30 seconds into it.
Yeah, and the amount of effort the amount of effort that was put into every aspect, except for that, was insulting.
Yeah, according to him.
Again,
I mean, first off, what about the
I
voice
invite
acting?
you. I invite you to look into the gallery descriptions of DMC4 and DMC5, and then tell me how ordered and accessible all of that information is. It's pretty good, right? I invite you to look at fives and tell me how detailed that is. Because fives tells you documents, old gallery descriptions, libraries, it tells you descriptions of weapons. It gives you so much information. It's like a giant library and catalog.
Yeah.
And that all of that is canon. Every bit of that is canon to DMC5. All of that. Despite this is without even regarding that the cutscenes are done in terms of their motion capture almost as well as 3's. They're done by the same actors
Almost
and everyone
as
who worked on
well.
3.
What the fuck do you mean almost as well? You're really gonna tell me 3 has better motion capturing than 5?
I'm saying three has like more over the top stuff
Oh,
in some
okay,
of its
yeah, I was gonna
cutscenes.
say, what the fuck are you on about?
Though again, the best moments of 5 are easily comparable, if not better, than some of the best moments in 3, aka Nero showing up, Dante's little Dr. Faust, Michael Jackson dance. Like there are so many things that you can tell. Like even if you want to tell me that it's like, oh, that's not gameplay, you can't sit here and tell me those cutscenes don't have effort put into them. Taneem, the guy that the director of the reboot of DMC, who considered Dante to be just like trash, who considered to be he called him a gay cowboy. That's okay. That statement was enough reason for Insuno to just give him the Dr. Faust hat just to make that cutscene, to give him an entirely new weapon. Just that comment of a slight against Dante was enough for Insuno to be like, all right, let me just make this. You don't tell me that's enough effort for another director to just like insult your character, and he makes an entire cutscene dedicated to making fun of how silly that comment is. Like, you really want to sit here and tell me they're not dedicated to that kind of stuff? The fact that like every aspect, and he will get into this later, every aspect that failed in DMC4 or in the DMC reboot, or something that succeeded well in DMC reboot or DMC4 and didn't get into wasn't as good as it could have been. Every aspect of those failed or almost successful attempts at mechanics and various just various ideas and assets. Most of those were put into 5 and were just made in a better fashion. Like the training mode in the DMC reboot, that was put into this game. I can go on, but as far as story, this is not in the slightest bit correct. This game does so many callbacks to all the other games, so many references. Even if you want to say like the boss fight, like that's gameplay. Well, again, it's a callback to DMC1 in its entirety. It's a love letter to that game.
I mean, but very clearly he's talking about like consistency and characters and stuff, as he'll get into later. So like, I think when he's not referencing story, it's not so much that he's not noticing there's not nostalgia there, but it's that I guess he expected more than nostalgia, or perhaps something more original.
I mean, this game doesn't build itself on just nostalgia. It just happens to have really good callbacks because the game, again, it builds itself on the knowledge and the world building of the series. So assuming you know this because you've read the source material, played, watched the source material, so on and so forth, like you'll be in for a better time. But again, if you have the complaints like the complaints that you have, Twin Review, in the first 5 minutes of your video, I can understand why you would think that this game is disappointing. I don't know how you came to that conclusion. That's really... especially for someone who's a longtime fan of the series, you would have been waiting years for this, presumably.
Does he say he's a longtime fan of the series? Like, does he say when he jumped in? Because, like...
Well, he doesn't say when he jumped in, but he says, I've been a longtime fan of the series. I've always loved it. He said he did say I played DMC1 back in the day. Back in, like, 2002.
Well,
and I'm like,
I don't know, man. Like, back in the day could mean, like, fucking when the HD collection came out.
I'm pretty sure he specifies 2002. Which, if that's true, how the hell can you not like DMC5? DMC5 was literally a game that was released for the fans. Yeah, you could say it was like a cash grab, but, like, there's so much fan service and so many mechanics and stuff that was implemented from previous games that were made better in this game, specifically because they were things that fans wanted and were brought over. There's very few things. There are a couple, but there are very few things that are not included in this game that are like significant enough to affect it. Yeah, okay. Besides Virgil, as far as story is concerned, you can't sit here and tell me that we'll get into gameplay later.
Alright, so let's continue forward, because I don't really have much to say on that regard. For me personally, when it comes to his opinion personally, I don't directly go at it, because having a personal opinion is not really something you can attack directly or, like, discuss, because that's just personal preference all across the board.
I understand, but there are points that he's making, like, the questions, he felt the need to edit a video. You have to understand, this person felt the need to sit down, edit a video, put those questions in a 5-minute compilation of asking us, like, why this works this way. So he felt that it was necessary to include all of that. Even if you think that's all his opinions, he is making a critique of this.
Yeah, no, the questions are fine, but when you have someone over here saying, like, there's little effort, I mean... So he says graphics and fucking gameplay is where all the effort went in. I'm assuming the cutscenes are part of graphics. I don't know why he left out voice acting, but...
Yeah, or motion capture.
Well, again, yeah, I'm assuming cutscenes fall under graphics, because I don't think he actually talks about the cutscenes themselves at any point going forward, does he? I know he does a case study here, according to his... Right before...
I don't think he even mentions the RE. Well, I think he references it once, but he doesn't mention, like, how good... Well, he just kind of mentions it looks alright, but he doesn't talk about the process or how it happens, so yeah, it makes me wonder whether or not he has sufficient knowledge.
I doubt... if he doesn't go into it, I doubt he's trying to use background knowledge or behind-the-scenes things. Because, like, when I criticize a game or something, I never go behind the scenes and be like, oh, well, you know, this must have done this must have done this. I'm just like, your game is fucking trash. Alright, so let's go and continue a bit further here.
Simply aren't operating on the level of mutual respect, I assume. No, Argy is not.
But of all things...
I'm not sure if that's going to be a problem. Yeah, I'm sure it's fine.
Why Devil May Cry 5? Is some silly hack-and-slash game really deserving of my fastidious criticism? At this
Okay, so I actually have to point out here, like, at 6:40, he says, is Devil May Cry 5 worth his fastidious criticism, which I'm assuming is, like, a fancy word for
I'm gonna ignore that, because the claims he makes afterwards are far worth our time.
I was just gonna say, fucking, dude, you're a YouTuber? Like, nothing is above you, okay? It's kind of like people who are, like, too good to flip burgers, you know? You're not above flipping fucking burgers, buddy. Well, let's continue.
Point, like most people who don't like confrontation, one could say that it's just a video game. It's not meant to be taken seriously. Or even, isn't it great how Devil May Cry 5 doesn't take itself seriously? These arguments don't make sense to me. They are encouraging people to stop thinking and stop asking questions. I know that a lot of people don't have a problem with that. And I'm not making fun of those people either. What I am saying is that
Whenever you're ready to provide some info, my phone is being really weird with my headphones, so just let me know what he
I was kind of waiting
says.
for him to finish his fucking section here. He's talking about I guess he's trying to say that some people would say it's just a video game, don't take it seriously, but he's saying he can't do that, so I was kind of waiting for him to explain his whole spiel there.
Yeah, go ahead, keep going.
Me to enjoy something, it has to make sense first. If it's dumb schlock...
Okay, so in order for him to
If it's
enjoy
genre
something, it has to make sense first. I'll get back to that, because he'll have follow-ups to it.
Alright, so hang on. So he's got The Last of Us right here.
defining, call it genre defining.
The Last of Us being genre defining? What genre did it define?
What?
The fucking PS4 exclusives? Oh, son of a bitch.
But if it starts out as genre defining...
Okay, so before we get into the Reddit stuff, if it's dumb schlock, it's dumb schlock. If it's genre defining, it's genre defining. If it's genre defining and then turns into dumb schlock, then I guess it sucks or something. So, first of all, I agree that DMC1 or DMC3 is genre defining because DMC1 started that genre definitively. We know that for a fact. Because most games that were played in a similar style to DMC1 were labeled as hack and slashes after the words. Okay, good. You did your research. And so DMC3 followed up on this. To say that The Last of Us is genre defining is only correct if you consider games that have sections of uninteractable walking sections to be considered a genre. If you consider that, then The Last of Us did start a genre. If not, then no.
Asylum come out first?
Yeah, so what did The Last of Us start? I mean, I've talked more than enough on my streams, but I'm going to mention it here because a lot of people are probably watching this video that haven't tuned into the streams. And that's fine. And so the PlayStation exclusives near the end of the PS3 genre were not good. This includes The Last of Us. Most people gave that game in its entirety, as far as its quality, a massive pass on its gameplay due to the story. That if you say the story is what makes it genre defining, again, there have been more impressive things done with stories that The Last of Us has done.
Damn, Mangler, if you're gonna throw shade like that, you gotta throw out a couple fucking names. If you're gonna say the story is not as good.
I mean, I'm not saying the story is bad. The story is phenomenal. It's just that's all the game has. It doesn't have repeatable and refeasible gameplay because Sony doesn't trust you to actually walk around with any amount of their system or the engine that's implemented in the game because they force you into so many sections that are uninteractable. You must do this one thing. You must do this quick time event. You must do this section. Blah, 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 blah. And that is all, or that's not all. That is most PlayStation exclusives that are made on the PS4 and the end of the PS3 gen by companies that are either owned by Sony or licensed by them. The only ones that don't are ones like Street Fighter V and Bloodborne, or like Nier Automata for a limited period of time, of course, like by companies like Square Enix.
Too.
I could say Spider-Man. Spider-Man's kind of. Wait, Spider-Man's not exclusive anymore?
No, it is a Sony exclusive.
Oh, well, I'm just saying as far as like having a level of like replayability, I guess you could say. I wouldn't include Bloodborne, Street Fighter V, and things like Nier Automata because not only are they not owned by Sony or even licensed by Sony, those games are made in their own format and are not abridged by Sony's involvement or their budget. The Last of Us is very clearly marketed for Sony's audience. I don't know what audience they were expecting to get, but it was entirely based on their cinematic experiences, as they claim, as they market, as Sony themselves suggests. So, is it genre defining? Again, if you consider it to be the start of Sony's cinematic experiences, if you consider that a genre, yes, it is genre defining. If you consider walking simulators a genre, I mean, I'm just going to have to sit here and presume there aren't any other games that had forced walking sections before The Last of Us. I know they became very popular with The Last of Us, but I'm probably going to assume even that's wrong.
I mean, I don't think it. Well, no, because Gears of War had forced walking sections too. Like, I mean, that mechanic came out before The Last of Us did. It's just that with The Last of Us, because of its lack of real gameplay, and as you pointed out, that's the majority of the gameplay is walking sections and stuff like that.
Well, it's not just that. It's the majority of the gameplay is sections where the control is taken away from the character, or the control is extremely limited, and you're just shoved into these animations and forced to do whatever the game wants you to do, and not what you want to do.
Sounds like you're not a fan of the future of QuickTime events.
I'm fine with the game being linear, because that's usually related to like level design and progression. But not as far as basic mechanics and control. That's really screwed. And as far as for the what's it called?
I mean, so he went from DMC being genre defining to it being like useless schlock.
Well, I was gonna say, in order for him to enjoy it, he has to take it has to make sense first. Well, as we've said before, as I've said, in order for it to make sense, you need to actually know what's going on. You don't know what's going on, therefore it doesn't make sense. So,
to be fair, along with that sort of critique there, that's kind of a one problem I've seen a lot in these recent years. I think with the internet, it's become more prominent. Like, because a lot of people on the internet make their living off of critiquing like movies and shit like that. Somewhere along the way, people just kind of they just stopped wanting to have fun after a while, in my personal opinion. Like, you watch some of these fucking critiquers, and it's like, oh, they go over every fucking little detail, and I'm just like, dude, just like enjoy the movie. And I agree with most of their critiques. It's not like I'm saying like that's bad, but they go after fucking everything. Like, not a single thing is fucking left alone, and I'm like, dude, just fucking give it a fucking pass for fuck's sake. No one gives a fuck.
So as far as DMC being genre defining and then turning into dumb schlock, is this criticism gonna show up for DMC4? Because DMC4 is less than half a game. Like, I mean,
I would assume DMC4 gets a pass because of DMC4's development cycle. Because from what I understand, there were issues across the board.
Even then, I could point this criticism to DMC4 SE. Like, DMC4 SE doesn't have this argument. And it still sold remarkably well for a re-release. So
a re-release with 3 new playable characters, though.
Yeah, but they didn't finish the rest of the game. Yeah, I mean, they didn't even adjust any of the mechanics. They didn't even adjust any of the mechanics for Dante. They didn't add anything. They didn't add anything significant to the story. I'm feeling a double standard here. As far as it being dumb schlock, again, you didn't understand any of the things that you were providing questions for, because you didn't read the source material or the lore.
I'm assuming this is in reference to the deep symbolism of DMC5, or like the narrative fucking like themes going on.
I got one word for you: nuance. Well, maybe 2 words: nuance and subtlety, because that's the reason DMC3's story is so good.
Yeah,
it's
DMC
very subtle.
Is nuanced and subtle. DMC5 fucking hits you like a fucking bus when Nero starts walking up the tree.
Yeah, no, but DMC5 still stays consistent with those character arcs and the established lore from the previous points in the series, which includes 1 and 3. So
would you like to know how long these 2 minutes have taken us?
What?
It's been 23 minutes.
Okay, that's not too bad, right?
Let's try and get to the halfway point, Mangler. Come on now.
Schlock. That doesn't mean.
Okay, so he said if it starts out as this and turns into dumb schlock, that doesn't mean I'm taking it too seriously, and it sucks. I don't want to bring up the sales argument, because I hate the PlayStation fanboy argument. That if it sells well, it does well. Look at Fortnite; that's not a good example, and that sold way better than any of the games that ever sold on that console.
Yeah, it must be really hard to sell a fucking free game.
But I do need to mention, as far as the genre is concerned, that DMC5 just sold 3.1 million units. Devil Never Cry just did a video on this, bringing up he was reporting the market sales for the Capcom's expectations. That at about March, they were expecting 3 million units to sell. So they surpassed their sales expectation by 1 month by about 100,000 more units. It is now the fastest selling DMC game obviously in the entire franchise, and the best-selling DMC game.
I mean,
And it has the highest quality of any combat system that exists in there. And even in terms of the story and the cutscenes, they're done exceedingly well, and they're only really beaten out by some portions of DMC4's cutscenes and most of the motion capture of the DMC3 cutscenes at their best. So to say it's dumb, that it's genre-defining and turns into dumb schlock, and you're not going to take it seriously and it's bad. I mean, again, I feel like we're missing some context here.
I mean, regarding the sales figures real quickly, I think we do have to acknowledge that a big portion of those sales come from the very generous discounts Capcom has released in the past couple of months regarding their...
Well, no. Even before they released those discounts, they were at 2.5 million sales. They were still the best-selling games.
I'm not saying the game sold bad, but I'm just saying, the extra fucking numbers of sales coming in that allowed them to surpass it.
Sure.
I think it's on sale right now for, $15?
No. It's like... I think it's 30. When it goes on sale, it's usually 20. But that's during the Capcom publisher sale. If you go back to the store when the sale's over, it goes right back up to 60.
Yeah, no, I get that. But in the past 6 months, I think that publisher sale has happened at least 3 to 4 times.
No, it's happened twice specifically.
Twice.
Once during Black Friday, and it was happening recently. I'm just saying that this is even more relevant because they've only had limited sales. God of War was the best-selling game on the PlayStation, and it dropped to $20 within a year on the secondary market. So that was at a perpetual level of being much, much, much cheaper. DMC5 didn't have that advantage, and it has a significantly smaller fan base and broke sales records through the roof. So to say it's bad when millions of people are recognizing its content, and even most of the DMC4 diehards would still say the same way. The fact that they, again, most of the things that they are modding to fix... Well, actually, we don't need to get into that.
I was going to say, the game sold well, and the game is of quality, but again, so he points out graphics and gameplay regarding those sales, and while I do agree the game, obviously good sales obviously means it's a good product, how much of that product is referenced via story and lore, because a lot of people bought this game for the gameplay, or at the least a lot of the new players bought this for gameplay more than anything else.
Most returning players play it for the gameplay.
Yeah, so you play it for gameplay. Well, I guess
the major criticisms of this game are of gameplay. They are not the people who have valid criticisms of this game. I'm not saying he doesn't have valid criticisms later, but the most valid criticisms of this game are from the gameplay, not the story.
Yeah, no, I mean, that seems fair.
Moving on.
All right, so let's go and continue further.
Taking it too seriously, it means that it sucks now. Most people online have been too afraid to say anything that remotely resembles an opinion like this. But if you've seen the comments section on any of my Devil May Cry...
Okay, so he immediately goes into sort of a shield here, which actually, hang on, I'm going to wait a bit further because I believe he mentioned...
My videos, you can see that I do not have this problem. But I am confused why everyone else does. My first video was even blocked by the Devil May Cry community on Reddit for being too inflammatory, only for them to post it themselves months later to make fun of it. They just didn't want my voice as part of the discussion.
Okay, yeah, so as you guys just saw there, so he mentions that people are afraid of criticism for the game, or that people are afraid to criticize it, and then immediately points out that the DMC subreddit removed his video for being inflammatory, and then allowed it to be re-uploaded again later.
Well, first of all, the DMC subreddit and the actual DMC Reddit are two different things. The Reddits... What you're looking at, that is the DMC Reddit. The DMC subreddit is the Discord servers that manage the Reddit. They are not even remotely the same. They are two completely different worlds of people. Some people on the Reddit do have valid comments. A lot of them are just drones, but...
Right, hang on. So if I go on Reddit and look up Devil May Cry, do I end up on the Reddit or do I end up on the subreddit?
You will end up on the Reddit. The subreddit is the Discord server. I don't know if they have the links on the Reddit website specifically, so you'll have to go searching for those.
Well,
but
this might be then a problem with him, because he does show the Reddit that I go to. So I believe he is referencing the Reddit, but I guess he calls it a subreddit, because I've always assumed they were just called subreddits.
Well, technically, they're the subreddit. They're interchangeable. The actual Reddit where people like that is the Reddit posting. Yes. As far as the because there are like sort of two different versions. There's like it's hard to explain because there's two different DMC subreddit Discord servers because they split. They had sort of like a falling out. They had sort of a falling out, and there's like a red R Devil May Cry server and a blue R Devil May Cry server. If you want criticism of the game, go there to Half Pint's Discord server, to Devil Never Cried's Discord server, to JoJo Wi-Fi's Discord server. Every DMC Discord server, including the people who are DMCs in our Discord server, in Zematorn's Discord server, every single one of us will, if you ask us what our criticisms of DMC 5, we will rip this game a new asshole. Like, it is not... the idea that we're afraid to criticize it is really... Man, it really makes me want to make like a video explaining my problems with 5, just to be pretty consistent about this. But I could talk.
Find his fucking video actually, or I want to try and find the Reddit post he actually put there.
Like people are not afraid to criticize DMC5. I've talked with all of these various YouTubers. They have mentioned multiple times that they have issues with the game that are pretty significant that affect their replayability of it, as well as things even in the story that they have problems with, very legitimate causes and concerns. But see, the difference between their concerns and your concerns is that even if I know they haven't read every single bit of source material, I know they've played all the games, watched the anime, at least read some of the novels and mangas, and they've attempted to, and they make an attempt to go back and read the gallery descriptions of these games. They make an attempt to understand the story and understand the gameplay fundamentally and its place in reference to the developers, as well as the budgets, dev cycles, the history of the game being produced. They try to gather as much information they can to formulate their opinions. You just gather enough to make it seem like it's presentable, and then present a video that is not very well informed, but is very well edited, so it gives the illusion that your arguments have credibility, when I don't believe they do. And suggesting that the people on Reddit, who aren't really any better formulated in their opinions than you are, but just happen to be more earnest fans of the series, yeah, I would argue that combination of both of those things makes it pretty toxic. And you're probably not going to get a pretty earnest response. So if you want a reason as to why they flagged your video for being inflammatory and then put it back there, probably because they just thought it would be funny to make fun of you. And
yeah, but that's kind of the point he's trying to make there. They did it and then they basically to exclude him from it. But I'm trying to find the fucking.
Again, if you don't want people to exclude you, go to those Discord servers. Especially the Discord server that manages this Reddit. There are more people there in total from all of those things than the people who are on the Reddit. Even if not, they're comparable, and those are actual people who will hop. They will either message you in the message chat or they will hop into VC. I'm in those servers. I can talk to you. I can get people to hop in the VC. I can bring people. Please, if you really want to have an honest conversation about stuff that's DMC related, because you seem, or at least you state, that you are a fan of the series, then make an attempt to prove it. Come and interact with the community and the people who actually care and research the game. We will provide you a conversation and criticisms of the game that you would want us to make. But you got to make that attempt.
It seems that I can't seem to find the post for his fucking video, because whatever they fucking named it, they named it something fucking.
I mean, I would argue JoJo Wi-Fi is much more gatekeeped from the game for the community than you, and again, he makes a lot of videos that people would argue to be clickbaity in their titles, and he's still able to interact. It's
not a fucking argument. It's fucking fact.
Okay, here's the thing. Look, he's still able to interact with the voice actors and get them interviews. He's still able to do collabs with Half Pint and RGB. Okay, so he's still able to interact with his own Discord server in his community because he knows about the source material. He knows about the lore. He makes an attempt to interact and communicate with people. He makes an attempt to communicate with the community. And the people who do. So that's we don't give him a pass. But see, our criticisms of him have to do with the way he formats some of his videos. They don't have to do with entirely, most of the time at least, with what comes out of his videos because we believe he's blatantly ignorant. You could make an argument maybe somewhere that he might have said something that would seem ignorant, but not every freaking video that he says is 100% wholesale balls to the walls, missing massive valuable like source and lore and like plot material for the sake of having a discussion on the story of any one of the games. That's just not something that happens with JoJo. And he's like one of the most controversial figures in our community.
One of the
like,
most controversial figures. What the fuck? Who the fuck else is supposed to be controversial in this fucking community?
Rizora, and like
Rizora fucking just lying about fucking E. That shit blew over fucking quick.
What do you mean? That doesn't mean it wasn't controversial though.
Yeah, for like what, 5 fucking minutes? I mean, like, I guess.
Well, I'm saying a lot of people in the Discord servers do actually hate JoJo Wi-Fi. They hate him pretty extensively, but I don't believe they could ever hate him as much as this person if they interacted with them. If this person continued to interact with him in this manner, I'm not saying this person is worth getting that kind of hatred. I don't think so. I just think I think Twin is just genuinely like ignorant on a lot of these things and doesn't make an attempt to get informed. Maybe he's busy. I don't know what's going on in his life. Point being, if you want to make a pretty valid statement about a lot of these things, even if they are your opinion, I mean, they're just your opinion. They're unspecified by any source of like validity. And an opinion can be valid sometimes, but you got to go looking for the information to make that valid, and you can find that in these communities.
Right,
that's all the point I'm trying to make.
A bit further, because I would have liked to have gone further in on this, but I can't find any of the fucking posts for his video, and he doesn't show the fucking post in his video. I'm assuming that's so people don't find it, because you have to consciously decide not to do that the way he's editing his video. So let's continue forward here.
Now, come on, guys. If we really can't talk civilly about a video game online, the gore's already won. So thanks for the views, and no, I'm not.
Okay, I think that's the most of it. So now we get into the story. All right, ladies and gents, we're finally getting to what we came here to do. Last video.
Hang on. My cousin's trying to ask me for help with his mouse because he's trying to reset his mouse to like invert itself.
Devil May Cry 5 is one of the worst stories you've ever seen.
Oh,
really? I mean,
videos. I do these videos.
By that logic, DMC3 would be in like there as well because it doesn't explain anything directly.
Yeah, but the difference here is timeline placement and like expectation plus time.
Sure,
you can't
sure,
put
but
fucking
you've
DMC5 to DMC3 because DMC3 is not only a prequel, but DMC3 came out.
But I can though because his expectations are predicated in the present coming up to release, meaning he was waiting for this game, meaning he had time to read the Deadly Fortune novel and 3's manga, which alleviates a massive variety of issues. Yes, there's still a lot of questions without like Before the Nightmare, but Before the Nightmare's novel summaries came out during the course of 5 and a little bit afterwards. And he made this review in August. So he had time to read this. Even Visions of V was a thing and had this first couple chapters at that time. I could go back and check the times for them because they come out like every 2 weeks.
Yeah,
so
I think Visions of V started at the very least there was the initial fucking teaser chapter. I want to say it was like late or maybe early August. And then from
so he knew
forward.
So he knew this was coming, and like I said, if he didn't interact with the community, that's his own fault. There are various DMC YouTube channels that have Discords, and if you check them out, and you ask them, if you ask around enough, eventually they will link you to the subreddit or various locations, which will provide you with links to all of these pieces of source material. They care about the game. They want to get people more invested in it.
From what I've seen on the Reddit anyway, the DMC community, they're kind of vultures. Wolves. They smell
I mean,
their sharks. They smell fucking blood and they go in.
if you think the Reddit is a representation of the DMC community, you're like fooling yourself. Go to the Discord servers. Those people are completely different. Again, the Reddit is not a representation of the Discord. Is not a representation of the DMC community.
All right, so
go to the Discord servers. That's where they hang out.
Let's get to the story now. How many minutes in? 40 minutes in. We're finally at the story.
Devil May Cry 5 has one of the worst stories I've ever seen, especially for a game that's supposed to wrap up the entire series.
Okay, so real quick regarding that point, wrapping up the entire series, that was due to leaks coming out earlier, and even then, the leaks were saying that it was going to wrap up the Sons of Sparta storyline, not the storyline of DMC.
Yeah. There's not much that you got it.
Yeah, so there's not really much more to say there, except like you could argue it did already wrap up their story nicely, because Dante and Virgil are probably going to be gone for the next couple of games.
There is so much wasted potential here. Now there's a lot to unpack.
Where you go, boy?
Okay, so if you need to wrap up, I think he genuinely is like one of those like PlayStation diehards. Because he brings up footage of Uncharted 4. Like, if you want to wrap up a story in any meaningful way, Twin, my dude, why would you bring Uncharted 4 as a reason to support your point? Uncharted's story ended in 3. Elena and Nathan were going to get married. That was the end. Like, it wrapped up the point. Sam didn't need to be introduced as a character. That was completely irrelevant. Sully was going to be retired. Cutter and that other girl were going to go do their own thing. He had finally given up his own legacy. I could go in further and further. The point of that story was already resolved. It didn't need a sequel. It was unnecessary. DMC 5 needed a sequel because we didn't know what happened to Virgil. Okay? We didn't get a proper game with DMC 4. There were so many other questions that needed to be added. Like Virgil just not existing in like a proper manner. That needed to be addressed. And DMC 5, while it doesn't explain what happens to him in the 15, 16 years, it does give us an answer about where he is after the fact.
Time travel.
Stop it.
Oh, please.
Stop it.
Oh, please. I'll bet money right fucking now they're going to say Virgil time traveled and fucking teleporting. I'll call it right fucking now. I seem to call most of this shit.
Please, no. Not relevant. Not relevant.
5 gifts.
Not relevant. Okay. Again, DMC 5 desperately needed a sequel to wrap up a lot of its plot points and to service the fans in the form of gameplay. Yeah, the series could end here. Sure. But it's just the end of the Sons of Sparta. They've already, like, Capcom has already secured the, what it's called, like, it's like the title license or something, the trademark, for DMC 6. Yeah, on their website.
Real fucking genius idea there. Let's get a title card for a game that's no way gonna come out called DMC fucking 6.
So, I mean, the Uncharted example is a really bad example. Most PlayStation sequels after their original trilogies are completely unnecessary. I could go on, Ratchet and Clank, Sly Cooper, God of War. Every single one of those wrapped up most of their plot threads pretty nicely and had unnecessary, completely irrelevant sequels. Whether or not those
4 games? I thought it had 3.
Yeah. Thieves in Time.
Is the 4th game?
Yep. And then Ratchet and Clank, all the future games in general. I mean, they didn't need to exist, but
Alright, let's continue.
The player for their time and loyalty, and doesn't treat them like a dumb child waiting by the stove to lick the spoon. That means all of the storylines, plot holes, and the rules of your universe need to work together. We need rules because rules provide context.
So, in order to wrap these up, you need to tie up all the loose ends in a way that rewards the player and doesn't treat them like a dumb child waiting by the stove.
Yeah.
Are you seriously going to sit? Okay, I can say for certain that not having playable Virgil feels very unrewarding. Yeah. But are you prepared to sit here and tell me that the changes made to Dante wholesale were not rewarding after what we got in 4?
I mean,
Are you
considering
really prepared to die on that hill?
considering we're talking about story, are you referring to story, Dante, like character-wise, or are you
I'm referring to gameplay right now,
Okay,
but we
well,
could refer to story
yeah,
too, and that would still be
try
consistent.
let's try and keep it with character and story for now. Since
All right,
this
all
is
right,
such
all
a
right,
gameplay.
all right, all right. Fine.
We're trying
Okay.
to get past this section, Mangler. Please, we're just trying to
Story,
get halfway point.
story. Dante's story finished in 1. I don't know how many times I need to explain this, but well, I guess he's not responding in between our response videos. Sorry, but yeah, it finished in 1. It finished in 1. It was introduced in 3. That was when his character arc started, and then it resolved in 1 because he got his issues resolved with Mundus. He was just depressed after he killed Virgil, or after he thought he killed Virgil.
In a constant state of fear and misery.
Shush! I don't need you to sing. I'm here to do a review. He just has depression from like 1 to 4 for 10 years of his life. He doesn't get a character arc in 4. He stops being depressed. That's just Dante. And he doesn't even need to be in 4 because he's just there. He's just messing around the entire game. If he wanted to, he could have ended the entire game immediately. Like, he could have just killed Sanctus, killed all the Order Generals,
Well,
and that would have been
to be fair, he tried to kill Sanctus, but then Sanctus
yeah,
came back.
Sanctus came back because they revived him, because he didn't kill the rest of the Order Generals. If he had killed Credo and Agnes, that would have been the end of the day. Nope, he wouldn't have gotten the Ascension ritual, even though he performed it.
Yeah, he already did the Ascension. In the novel, it doesn't specify they revive him. He just revives because he already went through the Ascension ceremony.
I mean, even then, he would have if he just came back double tapped, like.
Should be the second time. Yeah, no, but regarding the story thing there, I'm gonna let him go a bit further because I want to hear what he says specifically because it sounds like there is a point here to this that I'm just not remembering.
And that's wait. That's just Dante. Lady's character arc was finished in 3. Trish's was finished in 1. Nero's wasn't finished until 5. But you can't sit here and tell me Nero's isn't satisfying. Nero gets everything that he deserved in 4. He finally gets the power to protect the things that he cares about. That's sort of the thing that's mentioned, well, it's directly stated multiple times by Insuno in his interviews after the 4 SE, that the reason why Nero isn't like Virgil is because he has someone like Kyrie in his life. That's the only thing that tethers him to not being like his father, is because he has something to protect, which implies that Virgil lost everything, and that's why. Or that Virgil had someone like that and he lost them. But either way, Nero gets to that point at the end of the game when he realizes he now has the strength to protect his only remaining family. It's a very satisfying ending for him.
Also happens to be his girlfriend.
I'm talking about 5.
Oh, okay. I thought you were still on KDA.
No. Like 4 isn't a great place to wrap up because he doesn't get to have any dependency because he relies entirely on Dante the entire game. But 5 is different because 5 he actually awakens his own DT by his own manner, by his own power, and his own right, and that's what makes that scene so spectacular. It is a very satisfying ending for his story. I mean, if that wasn't enough for you, I don't want to tell you, but you can't tell me that it isn't consistent with the rest of his character arc or his development at that point.
So is the next fucking story going to be now fucking Nero having issues by becoming a father? Is that going to be the next fucking route we take?
Let me put it this way: 4 is to Nero as 3 is to Dante for different reasons, and 1 is to Dante as 5 is to Nero. Both of their character arcs finish in their second game. Virgil is a little bit different because Virgil has finally had an opportunity to mend a lot of the wounds he had with Dante and make
Virgil's
compromises.
character arc is already done because V carried it. V just did the character arc for him and came back.
Yeah, depends on if we get a Virgil DLC.
Yeah,
but
playable Virgil's gonna be great, but we know we're not getting a storyline. That'll be the real surprise if DMC 5 Special Edition comes out.
Anyway,
let's continue.
We don't understand how or why something is happening. Some would.
Okay, so actually, regarding the rules here for a minute, regarding the internal rules, I'm going to let them go a bit further, but we will be talking about the internal rules of DMC.
Call this.
So we need rules, we need plot holes. They all need to wrap up because they provide context. like the context that you were missing for all your questions, right?
Well,
like the
does he
rules that you were
mention
missing.
Does he mention the plot holes? Because I think he mentions that in plot, right? Because the only plot hole I remember right now is how is Virgil alive? But I
Yeah,
think you
no,
already answered
that's well, okay. Well, not how Virgil is alive, how he's back. Not how he's alive. Like where was he for the last 15 or 16 years? That's a plot hole. That hasn't been addressed for certain. Get your DeLorean crackpot theory out of here.
When I'm fucking right, you're gonna look back and think you were really stupid.
even if they introduce your idea, they're gonna make it so drastically different.
I don't know. They
It
did
won't
it for
even be
fucking
remotely.
Urizen.
Nah.
Dude, I'm telling you right now, if you watch some of my old videos, you can easily see some of the sources that came in DMC5, but I'm getting off topic here. So I'm going to let him continue a bit further, because I think he's going to mention internal rules a bit further, but if not, I'll go ahead and elaborate on that.
World building. Unfortunately for Devil May Cry 5...
Okay, so here we go. He goes into world building. Unfortunately for DMC5...
Okay, hang on. You sure. So I'll let you know when you can start talking, because I want to get through his point, because he's going to talk about blood right now, if I remember correctly.
Everything that happens in this story either openly contradicts something else from another game, retcons it past the point of making
Okay, so openly contradicts something from another game, retcons it.
any kind of sense, or just straight up ignores it. This is not world building. This is world destroying. If you want to spot when the game is trying to...
Okay, so I guess start off, contradict something. Hang on. We already mentioned this I'm going to go through this real quickly because we've already discussed this regarding Yamato. That's very clearly something the person wants to do. It's not that you just stab somebody and they get split in two. That's very clearly a power you have to activate.
Also, DMC3 was made in the context of Virgil caring about Dante. Even if it's not explicitly stated, if you read the manga, if you play the game, even without reading the manga, Virgil does things that he, in character, has no reason to do if he hates Dante. He has no reason to do if he doesn't care about Dante. Because he gives him a devil trigger despite already knowing, even if you don't agree with what happens in the manga where Virgil unlocks his DT, even if you don't think that's his DT, he confirms he has a DT after Dante DTs. He knows that would have unlocked his DT. Because he knows how his was unlocked, and he did it anyway, despite knowing it would make him stronger. And then he decided to fight more, and Arkham gives him a reason to leave, and he's just like, oh, I'm going to take it, despite Arkham not being in control of the situation. So that's, like, him not splitting his body in half is reminiscent of, like, him not wanting to have more trouble. If you think he hates Dante, as I said before, it's not in the previous video. If you think he hates Dante, it doesn't make sense for him to fight two enemies at the same time when you could just kill one of you. If you think he cares about Dante, no matter what your interpretation is, there's no reason for him to do it. There just isn't.
Okay, and then next one is retcon things beyond oblivion, referencing Michelangelo.
Virgil doesn't die.
DMC4 already basically confirmed Virgil lived, because the fucking armor ends up on the island of Fortuna. If Virgil just blew up there, the armor shouldn't have ended up somewhere else. So DMC4 already kind of hinted at or retconned that Michelangelo ended up on Fortuna somehow.
I mean, this is if we assume that Virgil died in the first place. Because why would Mundus tell Trish that Virgil was defeated if he was dead? It would just be easier to say he died.
Well, okay, so for that reference, because I did a theory video on this like 3 years ago. I did a theory video, because defeat does mean kill. If you defeat somebody, if you like,
no, it doesn't. It just means you best them in combat. That's the bare.
The definition does include killing your opponent. It's one of the definitions.
That is one of the definitions. The main usage of it is to include defeating, or it's just to defeat them in combat.
When you have a sword fight with somebody and you defeat them in a battle to the death, you presumably assume they kill the other.
Zim, this is DMC.
No, I know. That's why what I did is I looked for any other time the word defeat appeared in DMC. And it only happened, and I could be wrong here, it's been a while, but the only time I found defeat being used again was when Virgil acknowledges he's being defeated at the end of DMC 3. So the only other time the word defeat is used, it's using the connotation of not, like, dying. So that's where I came with the reasoning that the series, as of right now, has established a precedent that the term defeat does not mean killed. In fact, I think even DMC5 says that he defeated Dante at some point before we find out Dante's still alive.
It also states in the history of DMC in DMC4 that the armor carries the soul of Virgil. Vanquished just means conquered. It doesn't mean killed. It's
Again,
very specifically doesn't mean killed.
I mean, vanquished. If that means conquered, that's the first I've fucking heard of it. When I hear something's been vanquished,
well, it can be conquered or beaten or defeated. It specifically does not mean killed. It just means you've been defeated. And even then, I said before we had confirmation of where Virgil's body was. If you think Virgil's soul being in an armor equates to death, please explain to me how a soul can scream from pain. Like please explain to me how Nell Angelo screaming from just from pure emotional pain at the thought of looking at the amulet constitutes being not alive. That's there's nothing. Maybe there's a bit of inconsistency with how that's handled, but to say that it was retconned is to be ignorant of reality.
Fucking Joff was all fucking weird recently.
So he also says, what is it? Openly contradicts things. Retcons it.
Yeah. Hang on. Yeah. So.
And just straight up ignores it. And he shows a picture of Kyrie. So.
No,
I mean,
you can't defend this one, Mangler. They straight up.
Well, hang on a minute. What makes you think I'm defending? We're trying to be consistent about facts here.
Yeah, she was straight up fucking ignored. Okay.
No, she wasn't even included in the game. But I wouldn't say she was ignored. She's the reason Nero gets the confidence to go DT.
I mean, they couldn't even give her a fucking model for the fucking.
I know. But to say she's flat out ignored, to say she's not as important, that her relevance has been greatly diminished, I agree. That's fair. To say she's ignored is, again, it's not the right choice of words.
Dude,
she's literally
the reason she's there is because she was such a big deal before. If Nero wasn't let's say Kidia was a side character like Credo, I guarantee you she wouldn't even have appeared in this fucking game. She would have been fucking Patty, relegated to a fucking. Well, I guess.
But again, she's not. She's not. So, what do you do?
I don't know, man.
She's the reason. I don't know what to tell you other than the fact that she's the last point of comfort that addresses Nero. Yeah, you know what to do. I think you've got this.
And she was fucking wrong.
No, she was right. Because as soon as he does that, he's like, all right, I'm ready to go DT, and that's what he does, and then he stops Dante and Virgil.
I've never seen anyone psych themselves up the way he did. I couldn't save my brother, so I'm gonna succeed this time. Hey asshole, why didn't you DT the last time someone important died to you? That DT would have stopped Sanctious.
Because he already DT'd.
He's not this is my limit. No, you fucker. I really wish Souls exist in DMC because I'd love to go back and just fucking yell at.
All right, let's move on.
Ignore something that it doesn't want to explain. Look for Dante to say something dumb to redirect the conversation.
Yeah, well, that's a lovely story and all, but as long as we know where to find him. As much as I'd love to hear that story.
Okay, I do have to agree with this. one. You obviously feel free to disagree, but I have to agree. They bring up shit that sounds interesting, and then Dante's like, whatever, we don't have time for this.
Sure, I could agree that they definitely, Dante sideswipes the conversation, potential conversations. One of the biggest things I had that was a problem with DMC5, the main thing is that when he's talking to Virgil, and Virgil, after it being almost 2 decades, remembers the woman he had a child with and is like, wow, that was a long time ago. She's that important for him to remember it on the spot. And then Dante's like, haha, I remember you were young once too, but as much as interesting as that conversation sounds, we're not going to have it right now. Even though all of our viewers want to have it, we're going to tease it right in their face. Yeah, that was stupid. That was stupid. But the idea that the other scenes that you show that V needs to talk with Dante. No, he doesn't. Dante just needs to find yours. And Triss needs to talk with Dante. Dante doesn't need to. Dante doesn't need to talk to Trish.
No, I think what he's trying to say there is they ignore trying to explain that the Clyfall is upside down. They bring it up and then they ignore it completely. And to be fair, I kind of agree.
Only Dante ignores it, though. Everyone else is listening.
Yeah, but I mean, we as the player don't get the story because fucking Dante's like, how about no?
Well, that's all we needed to know was that it was upside down. Because I know that I'm going to be traveling into the next couple rooms. Is it really that relevant?
Well, the problem here is if it's upside down, why is the fucking root of the tree in the underworld growing upwards? Unless this is now confirming that in the DMC world, since the underworld is technically heaven, I guess the tree
technically
will be
the afterlife.
Well, I mean, yeah, DMC's a fucked up verse. But I guess if you assume it's at the top point because the angels did descend, I guess the tree growing up to the human world would be considered growing upside down. Yeah, I guess that makes sense. Because, again, the underworld is technically above them, so it would be growing downwards to the human world. Alright, but like you said...
As we all...
I'm not done talking yet.
Dante, that demon is...
As we all know, Devil May Cry is full of plot holes and bad writing.
I love how he brings up DMC2 for plot holes and bad writing, yet he doesn't bring up any of the actual bad writing in DMC2. He just shows the Arius fight, which is...
You do? I hope he realizes
is the best written portion of DMC2.
I hope he realizes that DMC2 is entirely the reason that, like... I mean, I know you don't really care about power scaling, and a lot of people who watch this may not mention this, but DMC2 carries the series in terms of the tiers of power. It does. Like, 2 and 2's novel carry the entire series on its back. Like, DMC2 is breaking down from the support that it gives. So even though it lacks in gameplay and story, it would have had... Zim believes it would be... I believe you said would have been potentially the best story if it had been developed.
Was fully... and I'm going to make a video on this one talking about the concepts of DMC games and talking about, like, the full potential they could have had here. And you feel free to join me for those videos. I'm sure you'll have a lot to say.
Sure, definitely.
From just a conceptual level, DMC2 had the best possible route to be the best game. Even based on... DMC5 is a non-contender for, like, best concept. DMC5 came out. It could have done its concepts better. The Japanese version seemed to have done a better job with its concepts, ironically enough. But DMC2 had so much to work with and could expand so much that even the little snippets of lore we got could have done so much for the series as a whole that I think it would have been, if not the best game in the series, it could have had at least the best overall lore in the series, hands down, and like fucking story. But gameplay would improve with fucking time, so can't.
So plot holes in 2. Well, plot 2 doesn't really have too much story to create a plot hole. It doesn't really have anything.
Ironically enough, 2 has no plot holes whatsoever because it's so isolated and within its own world. It's not. There's no plot hole.
If anything, it just adds to the world building, despite having almost nothing to add, and like that's kind of surprising because you'd think its inclusion would be negative. The only problem with 2 was the pre-retcon timeline and the fact that Dante was massively depressed, and that he just exists this way. And a lot of people assumed he was depressed in 2, which technically he was pre-timeline. But once we got the anime mixed around in the same year, then it was revealed, his depression was actually starting to soak up a little bit during the ends of the anime, and that by the time 2's novel has turned around, he's working through the ends of his depression, and he's fine. He still has his personality. And by 2, you realize, he's actually not depressed. He's just bored out of his mind. But you don't have the context for that. Again, if you don't,
DMC2, they should have just retconned it where he made a bet with Lady to be as quiet as possible for one of his missions, just to see how long he could last.
I mean, he made bets with Lady about not to do certain missions, and he lost them in the anime, so it wouldn't be impossible.
Right, so let's continue here.
But when utilized correctly, bad writing can offer opportunities to make some really cool connections and strengthen the overall story. Amy Hennig's work on
Legacy of Kain, so I'm just going to skip over this section.
Yeah, I was going to say Devil May Cry 5 would crush its world building if it didn't add nonsense nonsense dumb stuff like adding new powers to Yamato that never existed in the first place. Again, there's no definitive limit on what Yamato's powers. It's never stated that Virgil's abilities are the only abilities he has.
I mean, but you're casual, and I'm assuming this man is a casual story, like connoisseur here, because he very clearly isn't fully in depth with DMC. But on a casual level, Yamato's never demonstrated that power. It always had the potential to have more powers. I made a theory on this video on this myself, but you have to be really in depth with the lore of DMC to come to that conclusion. So I can sort of forgive criticizing Yamato's power.
No, because even if you're casual, you played DMC 4 and you played DMC 1, and you would know that between 1, 3, and 4, there are different descriptions and powers for Yamato. Nero literally throws an energy slash. You can't sit here and tell me an energy slash attack is the same thing as Virgil firing an attack from another dimension, from another plane of existence. You can't sit here and tell me
on the Reddit just to get an idea. I will post on the Reddit before DMC 5. What powers did you think the Yamato had? And I guarantee you, they're all gonna say it could throw anything. Because you're not wrong, and I made a video talking about this. I agree with you. But you're looking at this from your perspective. The casual person, and I'm assuming this man is casual given, how wrong he was, they're not going to find that shit, Mangler.
But what about DMC 1? It just blatantly states in the Yamato's description.
You have to replay the game with the Sparta skin to notice that.
You mean beat the game once and then start a file with Sparta and then just pause the game?
How many people...
Most of them played the games anyway.
You give people way too much credit, Mangler. I hate to break this to you.
That's not too much credit. A casual fan will still play through the game.
I will put money on this right. Okay, after this video's done, I'll post this on the Reddit and I'll see.
Wait. He sat through The Last of Us and 3 games of Uncharted, but you played through all of the DMC games, but you couldn't bother to play with a different costume that has a description of Yamato?
That's entirely possible.
What?
You do not understand.
This is not a high standard. You don't even need to play through the entire game. You just need to pause the game with the Sparta sword, and then you just go down with the Sparta gun. You just go down to the item.
You're also assuming he went through multiple playthroughs. He might have just played the one playthrough and got the story like that. Again, I'm not saying you're wrong, but you're giving people too much credit. You gotta tone that back a bit.
Example.
Trust me.
But I will want to address that nonsense powers. I mean, splitting your human and demon halves is not nonsense because it results in him getting
Rebellion had the nonsense power, in my personal opinion.
Rebellion didn't have any powers. Rebellion was just a physical manifestation of Dante's demonic power.
That's the point I'm trying to get at here. In DMC 5, Dante immediately makes the connection. You know what? If Yamato can split things, Rebellion must be able to combine them. Yamato and Rebellion were never similar at any point. Why would you assume your sword has a power?
This is Dante doing Dante shit.
I would fucking love if the art book for DMC 5 confirmed that the sword Sparta is what causes in DT, not Rebellion. That would have been fucking amazing. Just a happy accident.
So he says the key is to cover up plot holes, not make more, and he shows the scene where Dante.
Hang on. Where are you at? Because
I'm at 10:30.
Okay, so let me go ahead and let that play up to that point so that people can see what we're talking about.
Yeah.
And Full Fat Videos has a great video essay on how the Russo brothers faced Tony Stark's character arc in Captain America: Civil War. Devil May Cry 5 would crush its world building if it didn't use it to do dumb shit like adding a bunch of nonsense powers to Yamato that it never had in the first place. The key is to cover up plot holes, not make more. All it takes is 2 seconds thinking about it. For example, in the original timeline, Virgil was too young to have fought.
Okay, so I'm actually going to play further because he gives his own ideas for what would have been better, and I feel like you can go to a lot of listen to this too, but this is going to be what we're talking about, at the very least when we're talking about applause and shit like that.
Father to child. Maybe
did you get to 10:30 yet?
Was too young. Motto.
Yeah, I'm going to go a bit further though because he's going to talk about he's gonna mention some plot holes, quote unquote, that happened earlier in the fucking series that he's fixing right now with his own personal
Well, I do need to go over what he mentions.
Okay, so what are you gonna go over?
So he says the key is to cover up plot holes, not make more. It takes 2 seconds, and he's using the cutscenes from when Dante explains to Nero that he's his father.
Yeah.
That's not a plot hole. Nero was confirmed to be Virgil's son from the beginning. It was confirmed even before the game came out. It was confirmed in 2015 if you because again, if I can expect you to look into the deep depths of the internet and do Google searching and find secondary sources of information, because even if you're a casual fan, you still care about other shit and other source material. I
What
can
is your
expect you,
definition of a casual fan? Good God, Mangler.
again, like you played through all of the games.
Yeah,
And the
you
amount of
wanna
time
what?
and hours and commitment, the only difference between that is just a number of hours. That's it.
Yeah.
That's it.
Here's the thing, though. Again, like,
This is assuming he's a casual fan.
dude,
He,
no
he does,
casual fan is gonna
look
look
at
up
it.
if Nero's Virgil's fucking son.
Look at the quality of his editing. How do you not know that he's his son? He literally quotes him the exact same. Oh, without it's like give me more power. And then the Deadly Fortune novel, the fact that a Capcom employee stated it, that information went around the internet. All of the voice actors in 2015 stated, "Yeah, we thought you guys knew that." Dan Southworth, the voice actor for Virgil, said he confirmed it before the game even came out.
If I recall correctly, he called Johnny his son. On
Yeah,
Twitter,
yeah,
I
and
believe.
then his bosses were getting bleeding.
It's like, stop that, Dan, not again.
Whether or not you're a casual fan, like, I'm sorry, but if you're gonna make a video like this with all of the source material that exists now, I'm not gonna hold anything back.
I mean, okay, so let's assume for the sake, because he doesn't specify this, but let's assume he's strictly going off of in-universe knowledge. So let's not include things like Twitter or the Capcom director. If you read Deadly Fortuna's novel, which he read he read the DMC5 novel, which the only way...
No,
the
if
only
you
place
read the
can get it-
DMC5 novel, it's fair game for me to criticize his knowledge.
I still need to
That's
say Daniel
okay.
that fucking webpage, actually.
So if he mentions any of the novels, I can mention why he didn't read the other novels. That's fair game.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, so if you don't know he's his son and you've read the Deadly Fortune novel, I don't know what.
I mean, the
I
plot
don't know
hole
what to
there
tell you.
could be that how did Nero not know? Again, personally, I think the main criticism with that scene is that Nero never realized one of them was his dad, because that seems to be the implication there.
It would be a better implication or a better plot hole to suggest, like, how did they not communicate this to each other? But the Deadly Fortune novel really explains that he's a descendant of Sparta, and it explains that Virgil goes to Fortuna and talks to Sanctus. And Sanctus rationalizes, you must be the son of that man. And it's very clearly that Virgil is the one he's talking to. Because Virgil fits all the criteria that it's explained as.
Yeah, having white hair, gray eyes, that super fucking rare trait that if you have, you should probably assume you're related.
All right, moving on.
All right, so hang on. This is where he starts correcting it, and this might be a bit of time here.
Virgil was too young to have fathered a child. Maybe instead of creating a whole new character to be Virgil's human half, wouldn't it make more sense if it was Nero instead? That fixes everything and makes more sense. Or what's up with Devil May Cry?
Okay, so I'm going to start off with Nero and V, because I'm not going to go any further, so I'm on 1044, if you want to stop there. So he says that Virgil was too young to father a child in the original DMC timeline. I'm not going to stick too much on that, because me and Mangler already talked about that in the last video, but that's wrong. And if you really want to be, like, a little fucked up about it, a male can have a child after puberty, which usually happens around 12 to 13. So anywhere beyond that point, Virgil could have had a kid. It's fucked up, but it's technically not wrong.
He still would have been confirmed to at least 17 years old. And if you've ever heard of this thing called a teen pregnancy,
it's a
even
rare phenomenon.
then, those have a decent chance of having birth defects. This guy is the son of Sparta. How are you going to sit here and tell me that with his biology, he can't have a kid at 17 years old?
Nero's birth defect is being fucking retarded.
He can teleport. He can warp his body instantaneously. He's superhuman levels of strength. He doesn't have to eat. He doesn't have to sleep. He doesn't have to do any of this stuff, but he can't have a kid a couple years earlier? What?
Okay.
What?
And so then he says that rather than creating a whole new character to be Virgil's human half, it should have been Nero, and that solves everything. Except at a casual glance, Nero's arm is fully demonic. Why would that be his human half and have a giant piece of demonic fucking essence in it? Hey, what's up?
Oh, wait.
Whoa, you're gonna kill me now? You wanna fucking go?
Wait.
Sorry.
Wait.
Knife. It was nice knowing you, Mangler.
Are you playing a game right now?
I'm not. She has a knife in my room, and she's walking away now.
Okay.
I've won this day. Continue.
So he's claiming that it would have been better if V had been the human side of Nero?
Yeah, he claims that he would have been that. No. My mistake.
Oh
Not
my
the
God.
human side of Nero. That Nero is the human side of Virgil. That's what he's trying to claim would have been better.
How would that even work? He has a healing factor.
Well, to be fair, and again, I agree with you because he has a giant demonic arm. That's very clearly
Who
not
would be the
fucking
demonic?
human.
Who would be the demonic side then? Like what? What?
I'm assuming in this setup, Urizen would still be the demonic side.
Then what is V?
I think he's just saying V shouldn't have been a character. Well, I mean, you could have still had V just be like a sorcerer, because sorcerers are a thing in DMC.
Yeah, no. Well, I don't know if it's like alchemists specifically, but they're like.
No, Arius was confirmed to be a sorcerer.
Oh no, I was referring to the anime. There's like a.
Yeah,
There's
the anime,
someone. It's
there's
like Peggy's father, I believe.
Yeah, no, not Peggy's father. It's like her great descendant, Alan Lowell. He's an alchemist. Arius is a sorcerer, and Chen. I don't know.
Chen
what
is a mobster. Chen is a mobster who's done like a ton of research and has taken.
I
quite a
guess
few
Chen is an occultist. I guess is the correct term for Chen. I'm not too sure on like what Chen is, but Chen's like
Yeah,
somewhere in there.
there's a variety of different things.
Arius was stronger than Chen. Arius stronger than Void Moon is confirmed. All right, so continue further because he goes on because there's no reason to talk about this any further. That's a dumb idea, and it's a dumb idea because Nero has a healing factor, a demon arm. Although it would explain Devil Trigger.
Yeah, I mean, it wouldn't explain that he has a completely different stand and isn't Virgil's DT. But
to be fair,
I mean,
it is based on Michelangelo loosely. You could easily fucking
sort of. Yeah, you can say the design is inspired, but it's also inspired from Dante's design as well. So that like kind of pokes some holes in that.
Well, Nero technically has two fathers because Dante and Virgil have the same genetic DNA. So technically,
look, I don't want to talk about that. Let's not. How long is this video at this point?
We're currently sitting at the hour and 16-minute mark, and I'd like to get to 20 minutes of this video. I'd like to get to the 20-minute mark of this video, so we're gonna go.
No. Okay, so it doesn't make more sense. No, that's dumb.
All right.
Cry 4 and 2 having the exact same cookie.
Okay, so this part right here, I have a personal beef with this one. I'm gonna let it play further, but this is where he brings up my boy Argosax, and I'm gonna talk about it afterwards.
Cutter villain. Why not retcon it so that they're both Argosax? And look at that, we have a new series antagonist. After Argosax failed to cross over with Sanctus...
Okay, so what did he say? That after Argosax, after Arius fails to cross over, he becomes Sanctus?
Hang on, Mangler. No, I'll explain what he's saying. I'm just going to let everyone else hear it real quickly. So just like rewatch it.
I'll say heads over to
I can't see, because I'm only looking at the Discord.
Yeah.
I'm only looking at our Discord DMs, so you gotta
stop
point it out
Argosax
for me.
once and for all. And do we just fix Devil May Cry 2?
Okay, so hang on.
The possessed Sanctus form even looks like the Despair embodied anyway. Man, what else could we fix?
Okay. Oh boy. Okay, breaking down that they have the same cookie cutter villain. No. Sanctus is a pope leading a religious cult. Arius is a businessman leading like a
corporation.
business. Yeah, a massive corporation.
Yeah.
To call them the same cookie cutter villain is inherently false. They're different types of villains in general with different goals and motivations. Arius wants to be immortal and all powerful. Sanctus wants to save humanity, ironically enough.
Yeah, well, Sanctus does want to take over the world, but he wants to take it over by exterminating all of the demons. His actions are actually a net positive to mankind in a weird way.
Sanctus wants to be a beloved leader. He wants to be in charge, but he wants the people to put him in charge.
That's why I would say it's like you could argue in some potential future Sanctus is a villain, but technically he's an antagonist because his what's it called? His results would have been positive for the world.
Sanctus is an anti-hero.
No, not an anti-hero because he is the antagonist of the story, and you can't be an antagonist of the story while also being an anti-hero in the same one.
No. You're not qualified as such, but if we're looking at the actions from a third-party perspective, Sanctus does whatever he wants for a net positive, and his goal inherently is not negative.
Well, he says absolute power is his goal. It just happens to be that the only reason he wants to kill demons is because of his the fundamentalism of his religion. It's not because he genuinely believes human beings need to survive. It's just like he believes it's what Sparta would have done, even though Sparta specifically tried not to kill as many demons as possible.
Yeah. Look how well that fucking turned out.
So
Okay,
Arius is not the same at all. Like,
yeah, no, like they're not comparable. Well, I guess you could argue they're comparable in their scope of scale of what they wanted to do, but they're not the same cookie cutter villain. But so then he goes on to say that the story would have made more sense if Argosax was responsible for DMC 4 and 2. Argosax starts off in I'm assuming he's talking pre-retcon timeline because that's the only way this makes sense. He says Argosax starts in DMC 4 trying to become, trying to come through with Sanctius, and because Sanctius' final form apparently looks similar to Despair embodied, and you can see some resemblance, fair enough, that would be the first attempt. That fails, and then Dante finishes him off in DMC 2. Now, to be fair, I would like more connective tissue between the games, but that in and of itself would imply way more ramifications. That would mean Argosax had to come through multiple different areas.
That would actually create more plot holes, like way more plot holes.
Like,
because
why didn't he come back earlier since fucking Sparta never dropped his ass?
Well, I meant more so along the lines that Arius literally confirms he's going to revive Argosax, and that Argosax is confirmed to be sealed by the Arcanas in a dimension under Vito Marley. So how is he just chilling in Fortuna, but somehow also in 2? That creates a massive plot point.
Bro, when you're immortal, you don't fucking have to worry about this shit.
Oh, okay, yeah, I forgot about that.
Yeah, you forgot. Okay,
so it's just did we just fix DMC2? No, you made it worse.
Yeah, on theory, the connective tissue is a little better, but when you look at the details, it makes things a lot harder.
You also mess up Dante's personality back to what it was pre-retcon, and now the anime is even more inconsistent. Which also messes up. If you complained about Morrison not being included, he's going to be waiting for even longer now. So
right, let's continue.
Okay, no more swords opening portals to the underworld.
Okay, I'll let him finish his point here. He's talking about the currently swords to the underworld.
That's getting annoying. The amulet worked for Devil May Cry 1 and 3.
Okay, so the amulet does not open the way to the underworld in Devil May Cry 1. That's actually the Philosopher's Stone. There's a big point about making the key to the underworld. The amulet did not open the portal to the underworld in DMC 1, but I get what he's saying here.
Can work for a Devil May Cry 5. Or at least, unmake it or something cool. It's the last thing Dante has from his mom, so letting that go would be a cool character moment, and we can close that plot hole forever. Damn, I'm good. Oh yeah, and...
Okay, so, the amulet, do you want to really talk about it, or do you just want to move on beyond it?
Again, Dante's character arc ends in one. All of the significance from his revenge and his hatred that he wants against Mundus, all of those plot points are resolved in one. Which is why when he gives the amulet to Trish, he trusts that she has it. I said before in the previous video that it's merged with Sparta. I forgot that in that scene it is actually separate. It doesn't really matter, though, if it is separate, because its purpose has been served. And that's okay. It doesn't need to have another purpose. It served it perfectly, and he's come to closure with the death of his mother.
Okay, but regarding swords opening the underworld, even though this happened one time, actually?
Yeah, he said that's dumb. Okay, first of all, the sword, even before DMC5, it only really opened the Hellgate in Fortuna. So even if you were to complain about that, that's a weird thing to complain about.
That's the only Hellgate that was opened with the fucking sword, right? It was just the one in Fortuna? No other...
Yeah, we don't even... It's not even confirmed 5 that he seals the Temina Gru with Yamato. It actually is confirmed that they don't know which sword was used. So it could have been multiple. It could have been different ones. As far as separating the world from the demons, when Dante says that in context, this is also considering the fact that this is before Agnes gets his hands on it and then unseals the Hellgate in Fortuna specifically. So it's not clarified whether or not he means... Because we know it's used for that Hellgate at the bare minimum. That's confirmed. We don't know if it was used to separate the human world and the demon world for certain. We don't know that, definitively.
I would assume it played some part in it, unless Sparta just fucking straight...
Sure, but again, he seemed to have a problem with it in DMC4. Again, it never states that in DMC4. There's good reason to believe he was just talking about Fortuna, because this is the first time it's being brought up now. Granted, it's relevant now because they're having the conversation and the context is necessary for them to have the discussion in the first place. But at the same time, I mean, there's various locations where this would have been relevant. If he had Yamato before, he could have sealed it. Maybe he could have brought it up in DMC2. Man, if I had Yamato, I could have sealed the Argosax's dimension. Like, that's a completely relevant thing to mention.
And then he doesn't.
Yeah.
Alright, so let's go to continue further, actually.
Dante's trapped in the underworld after Devil May Cry 2?
Point being, it's not a problem.
That's awesome. I heard that the most powerful demons are having a civil war right now. What would Dante do in that kind of situation? What would the characters do without Dante in the human world? Nero, Trish, and Lady would all team up. Man, that would be a great place to start a game. These are some awesome ideas. All right, so what did they end up doing for 5? Oh, wait.
Okay, wait, hang on. Okay, so the last point he brings up, but he doesn't really talk about how it should be better, because he's going to talk about it later, but he brings up the fact that the underworld's in a civil war, and that Dante was trapped at the end of DMC2 in the underworld, and that could have been a good setup for a good game, and what Dante would have done during the civil war. I agree with that. I do think that should have been explored. Hopefully we'll get a novel about it at some point, but I doubt it. But yeah, I do agree with that point. I think they should have mentioned the Civil War a bit more, prominently. That's a pretty big deal in the lore of DMC.
All right, so this might be the first time he's made a solid point that I have no exceptions to that I agree with. So we're now about 12 minutes in, roughly almost a third of the video.
Of fucking discussion.
And 3 hours of discussion, and we have 1 point. All right, so we got 1 point. Okay, continuing.
Okay, so this is where he starts talking about the issues that came up with DMC5 along the way. And I'll say, I hated this. I hated the timeline change. I've said it. I don't like it. Mangler seems to disagree with that point, but that's what he's going to talk about right now. So let me just go and let him speak for himself.
They switched the chronology around? Oh, well, that's okay. There's still plenty of new ground they can cover. Oh, a demon invasion. I thought Nero and Dante were protecting the human world.
Okay, so I'm at 12:05 and I already got to stop here. He says, demon invasion. I thought Dante and Nero were protecting the human world. Yeah.
How could they let this happen?
They're gonna fucking stop it. Like, they don't preemptively check the demon world for fucking invasions.
So maybe this is unclear to you. This one, you have to take a little time to pick. If you're really a casual fan, I can understand this. Well, for reference, now that you know, Virgil and Dante can sense demons. Virgil senses them pretty extensively in DMC3. There's a cutscene in Mission 4 where he's standing on top of the tower, and he can literally sense so effectively he knows everything that's going on in the tower, as indicated by the fact that Lady is only above the room where Cerberus is, at the bottom of the tower, and he can sense her existence, and he can confirm what her gender is. That's how accurate his sensing abilities are. And that tower is miles wide. His radius is kind of insane.
I mean,
Dante's...
Well, we can't assume Dante can sense things like halfway across the planet.
Well, yeah, no. Dante can only really sense the length of things. So they can sense demons, but I was going to say there's caveats to that. They need to be relevant in proportion. Like, the reason why Dante's a devil hunter is because he's there to kill demons, but people, his business is set up as a private investigation. People have to come to him to request a job. He doesn't know what's going on unless people tell him. The idea that it's like, oh, how can they let this happen? Like all the events that have happened in the DMC timeline, Temenagru, like, that ends up becoming a personal matter to him. DMC1, he gets a job from Trish. Mundus is already existing in the castle and killed everyone there. Again, all of those trauma happened. You could blame him for that, even though you love DMC1 and you'll probably make an excuse for it regardless. DMC4 happens in its entirety. I mean, there's still... the Order seems to be abducting people and taking devil arms. Again, not seeing complaints for this. DMC2 is backed by the Ouroboros Corporation, so you can make an argument. But this happens in 1 and 4, at least. DMC5 is just more blatant because the human world and the demon world are breaking down, and the stakes have never been higher. It seems a little bit more bleak.
All right, let's continue. But yeah, no, this point inherently is stupid.
How could they let this happen? Oh, Dante and Nero are there. All right.
Okay, Dante and Nero are there. Yeah, but they show up after the fact. Again, they're not proactive in their demon hunting. They're reactive. Argue how much you want on that, but, whatever.
I mean, it
Yeah,
made more
Virgil's
sense
still reactive, and he has better sensing capabilities.
if demons were taking over because Dante was trapped in the underworld and couldn't do anything to stop it, but whatever.
Okay, so initially he's like,
Better late than never.
Okay, so he's saying that a better way to go about this would be that Dante being trapped in the underworld would incentivize demons to come to the human world since Dante's not there to stop them.
No, DMC2 and DMC4 disagree with you massively. Because after Dante came back, there was a period of peace because he killed so many fucking demons in the demon world. They were scared out of their minds at the thought of coming to fight him. Or at least most sentient demons. Like to put this in perspective, Dante's business is going down the tubes. It's starting to go down the tubes at the end of 1, but you don't see it until the anime. By 2, he's pretty depressed because he's bored/depressed. He's getting around it, and his business still kind of sucks. But he doesn't have to take care of his business when he goes into the demon world afterwards. This is relevant. I will mention why. So when he comes back to 4, and he hasn't had to pay any of his bills and stuff, he feels, all right, I can start my business, resume my business again. This should be pretty solid because I just went to Fortuna. There was a Hellgate I had to close. Obviously, people still have jobs for me. And then his business goes down the tubes again. Because, again, there aren't enough demons breaking over into the human world.
When you're too good at your own job?
Yeah, when he literally killed all the demon kings. Like, he killed Argosax, Mundus, Abigail, and he killed Void Mundus in the 2's novel, he wiped out Balrog. He wiped out Burial. He wiped out literally anybody that was everybody, and then killed hundreds to thousands of different demons and sealed off multiple Hellgate portals. What are you expecting the demons to do to him? Like, the only reason the demons even show up in 5 is because of Virgil. Like, not because they decided to launch a solo campaign in a futile attempt to take out Dante.
Either you get out there and beat Dante's ass, or I'm gonna beat your ass.
So the idea that we're gonna put Dante in the demon world and that'll like sort of save things. For starters, even if we're using the pre-retcon timeline, all of those things have still happened. He's still taken out Abigail. He's still taken out. I mean, the only difference is that now he just took out Argosax. So he literally just killed like the strongest demon king. Save for, I mean, you can make arguments about who's stronger between Void Mundus and Despair Embodied. Despair Embodied for certain is stronger than Abigail and stronger than Mundus, who are still well known. They were taken out, and then he just one-shot the Despaired Body. He didn't just fight him, he one-shot him. He headshot him in the face. So the thought of a Dante that is not only like bored, but is like a cold-blooded killer, this is a Dante that doesn't hold back and doesn't mess around, is going through hell, just taking out people left and right. And you want to make a campaign where those demons, even despite that, are somehow summoning the forces with no leaders and kings to send an invasion into the demon world to take out an experienced, seasoned Nero, Lady, and Trish when Dante is slaughtering them to the point of extinction. Like, I don't know if I'm on board with that idea. Because the only reason, it only makes sense in the context that Dante doesn't know how to get back. He only really gets back because of the Shard of Yamato. Not because the power or the placement of the demons as a faction, as like a species, assaulting the human world has any merit. It just means that Dante doesn't really know how to get back. It's not that he's trapped because of his own lack of knowledge, not because of capability. Basic demons can jump back and forth between the human and demon world. He should be able to break sheer force of will.
Let's continue.
Oh, a demon tree. That's kind of Tim and Agru, but it's not like this is Virgil or anything.
Okay, so he says the demon tree and then brings the Temune Gru as like examples of similar things going on. And yeah, I suppose you can make that argument, but one's a tower, even if it's similar, why would you assume similar things don't exist in this, in the universe? One's a tree that provides a fruit that just happens to let demons come through. The other's a tower that just happened to be holding tons of fucking demons. I mean, it's similar in concept, to be fair, but I don't know. Feels like we have a cheap shot here.
Let's do this.
He mentions how it's like, oh, who decided he's king? What happened? Well, he is referred to as the nefarious usurper, so I'm assuming he usurped whoever was at the throne.
That's what I was when I was watching that part. Here, let me play it for you guys.
Hang on, I'm gonna go to the rest, and I'll be right back in like 10
king.
seconds. So keep talking.
Who decided he was king? The Civil War is over? Damn, this is serious.
Okay, so regarding that situation, as Mangler pointed out, he is referred to as the nefarious usurper. So there's no reason anyone should have thought that this guy didn't take the fucking throne by force. That's very clearly what's being instigated there by the term usurper. Not only that, he's referred to as nefarious, so we can assume that, again, he was pretty brutal in his conquest of the demon world. Even if we want to assume the other demons are still alive, they've at the very least bowed their head to Urizen. So, yeah, unfortunately there, I'm not too sure what the hell it was on about there. Very clearly, the game was as clear as day with that title. I don't know how much more you could fucking ask of the game from that point. But let's continue a bit here.
Oh, they're not worried about it? Oh.
I've returned.
Okay, good. I was going to say, because I just got onto the next section.
I'd be worried about it?
Like, not the next section of the video, but like continuing the video.
Oh, shit, he just kicked Dante's ass. Are Lady and Trish okay? Oh, Nero doesn't really care? Oh, he's happy. Oh, okay. This is weird. All right, you're going down. Oh, wait, I don't have...
Okay, so he says there's a disconnect between how the characters are feeling about the situation and how drastic the situation actually is.
Again, we'll provide the years an example. Previous example. You're not the character. I mean, yeah, you control them, but you don't have their life experiences or anything relative for reasons why they shouldn't care about. Again, Nero knows Dante is the legendary devil hunter. Dante is very confident in this circumstance because he is the legendary devil hunter, because he has the feats and the statements to back that up. So yeah, they have a reason to be overconfident.
Nero, devil hunter, Dante, the legendary devil hunter.
Legendary deadweight. So they have reasons to be overconfident. It's like, oh, should I care? Well, you're playing the game, right? And you'd like to finish it. That's why when Dante starts losing, you're like, oh, I guess these have higher stakes than before, because he hasn't lost a fight since, like, DMC 1.
Yeah, no, so I don't really understand the I understand maybe you'd like your characters to be a bit more real grounded, but they're half demons. Like, they're not going to be anywhere near as grounded as, say, someone like fucking Solid Snake or something, or Leon. You know, they're not going to be suffering the same problems we might have with a situation like this. For fuck's sake, Dante gets punted out of a tree for a month and he's perfectly fine afterwards.
So we'll get into the rest later. Continuing on, like,
I don't have any of my old moves anymore? Oh, I have to buy my old moves again. Okay. Well, and this boss battle doesn't seem very fair. Oh, so he's just gonna sit there?
Nero still doesn't care. Yeah, no, there's a reason for that.
Well, hang on, I'm at 1308 right now.
Holy shit, so this is like the end of the world then. Damn, this is crazy. This shit cannot wait. And they just all left. For a month. They left him alone for a month? What the hell is going on? Wait a minute. Urizen is Virgil, isn't he? Are they doing Devil May Cry 3 again? They're doing Devil May Cry 3 again. Wait, but... Oh no. So now that we have the
Okay, so... the last thing he mentions is he's upset that Urizen is staying in the chair. I don't understand what his problem with the chair Urizen is. There's a narrative reason for that. Like, that's literally explained narratively that he just doesn't see you guys as worthy opponents. And then he talks about that, like, oh, the world's ending, but they leave the tree alone for a month. I'll be honest.
Oh yeah, why do I have to buy all my old moves? Have you played any of the other DMC games?
Yeah, that one also seemed kind of like fucking stupid.
If you played DMC2 and you prefer that system of non-existent progression, I can see why you have a problem with 5. If you played literally any other.
Actually, DMC2, when you buy the swords, you do gain like an extra move every time you level up the sword.
No, you don't actually. That's
pretty sure you gain.
No, you just gain power. You just gain power.
Sounds like a great game.
I wish that were true. But they didn't even have that.
Alright, so let's go ahead and continue further. So now he's talking about... Okay, actually, real quick. Regarding
End
the
of the
1
war.
month time skip, I kind of agree with this one. That tree is spreading like crazy. There's no way to tell it's going to stop at Redgrave. Why on God's green earth would you leave it alone for a... Well,
Again, I'm going... Well, go ahead. Just... Sorry.
I was going to say, I'm assuming that fucking... Like, they leave, and then when the tree stops spreading, that's when they take their fucking time. Because that you can try stopping the tree from spreading at least. Come on now.
We'll know in Visions of V, but as far as in the best explanation I can offer, because Urizen just kicked all of their asses and captured half of their forces, so they don't want to waste any more manpower going in there to fight that has beaten people that are either, again, say what you will about Trish, she was stronger than DMC4 Nero, so. Trish is almost relative to where. No, Trish was relative to where Nero would be, and he still considered her a powerful double hunter. She got beaten in like 2 seconds. Lady got beaten in like 2 seconds. Dante, who was way stronger than either Nero V and Nero combined, just got beaten in like 1 second multiple times after fighting.
To be fair, the fight lasted over like 5 hours, so you know.
Okay, yeah, but it doesn't matter for Nero because he gets there and he's like, "Oh, you've been fighting for like 5 minutes."
I'm here now. Oh, you're dead. All right.
Yeah, so they don't have a reason to stick around because they can't do anything. They're gonna try and save residents.
They can't stop They can't stop Urizen, but they could have stopped the spread of the tree by cutting down the vines. They all have fucking weak points somewhere on their fucking vine. So let's continue.
I'm assuming it was just a system where it's like, oh, we had a plan set out, and then things went sideways, and even the backup plan didn't work, so we got to get the fuck out of here because we can't lose any more people. That's
laughs at Redgrave loses its entire population. All right, so let's continue with the plot.
The world building is a mess, but what actually happens in Devil May Cry 5? Honestly, almost nothing. Even though I make fun of it, the whole beginning chapter of the game is actually my favorite part. It throws you right
okay, so just a joke, I suppose.
At least
if you got to 1343.
Oh, where how nothing happens?
Yeah, just.
Well, no, I've seen this portion actually. He does a very brief overview, and with that overview, you could argue nothing happened. But I'll let him do it for himself.
Up some decent stakes, but without any kind of follow through with the rest of the game.
He does the DMC5 DMC reboot comparison roll at the 30-minute mark, so we can get back to what that stuff is.
Oh, yikes!
Flat almost immediately.
So are you at 1330?
Kind of sucks.
I'm at 1409 right now because I want him to explain his reasoning before we go into it because I know he's gonna explain it.
Taking out Dante, Trish, and Lady, and Rebellion at the same time.
Did you stop at 1353? Because he does make another mention of something.
What does he mention there?
So he says, what happens in Devil May Cry 5 if, the building kind of trash, but what about the actual events? Almost nothing.
Yeah. He explains it going forward, and I want him to explain that before we go into that because I've heard his overview, and if you just listen at the overview, you can kind of understand where he's coming from, but he simplifies way too much.
Bold move, but the game doesn't really treat it as anything to worry about. It's so much of a non-issue that they wait an entire month before going back. Okay, so I was going to wait for him to explain his reasoning, but around 1420, he says something I kind of have to elaborate here. So, big fucking deal. Dante gets beat, big fucking deal. And then he says the game treats it like it's a non-issue. They got their ass kicked, and they had to retreat and wait a month to come back. That's a pretty big issue, but more importantly than that, that scene is for us as the player more than it is for them. That's why Nero doesn't witness Dante lose. We witness Dante lose because that's supposed to be important for us to set up the stakes, not so much for Nero. He's already got his ass beat. And we don't even start winning until we take the fight to Urizen, because even though V and Nero come back as the second wave, and they're like, all right, we're gonna at least cut off his blood supply, which is okay, pretty solid plan. They start taking out the Qliphotep roots, and then V finds Dante and is like, all right, I better get the Sparta sword to him.
And then you get to play through Dante's level and then watch Dante lose again to let you know how much you suck. And then immediately afterwards, Dante's like, all right. Then he rescues Trish. Then, Lady has been rescued. And then he goes to his house, has some internalized conflict and thought process in regards to rebellion, gets a massive power-up, and is like, all right, now I'm going to go destroy Urizen. And you can't sit here and tell me that DMC5, that like the game treats it like nothing. If Dante has to go through all of that just to get a power-up, and then by the time he gets there, he's activating a mechanic that, like, the most broken, overpowered mechanic that was ever introduced in the series, called Majin, but in a balanced manner that is also useful and really cool. Like, yeah, I know. By the way, Twin review, Majin form is retconned by the existence of Sin DT. Well, it was never canon to begin with because it was just accessible via gameplay.
I'm stopping Mangler's fake news right now. We're continuing forward.
No. We got to talk about it. But yeah, the Sin DT mechanic is extremely rewarding, and that happens as a result of Dante losing. Dante has to lose to come to the revelation that he needs more power. That he's not the strongest. He can't just be an overconfident little punk. Like, that's not how that works.
Laughs at Dante. At any rate, so again, the stakes are more set up for the player than they are for the people, because the people handle things differently than we do. So most of those scenes and setup is for us to be invested, not so much them to be invested. Continuing forward.
Supposedly so that Nico can make Nero's breaker arms, but why write in such an inconvenient time gap when the breaker arms don't even make that big a difference in Nero's power level in the first place?
Okay, so he says...
I got to talk about the breakers?
1434 is where I was at. So he says, presumably the reason is because Nico needs time to make the breakers. Well, Visions of V hasn't got to that point yet, but we're about to. So yeah, presumably it is. But if we're assuming that, and you're saying it doesn't even make a difference in Nero's power level, boy, have you seen what Ragtime can do? Like,
well, to be fair, Ragtime's only made after the fact. But what
I understand, but like the breakers, like she only makes one breaker, and that's Overture. He uses that with the rest of his skills to get the rest.
No, she makes two. You start off with Overture and Gerbera.
Oh, okay, yeah, Gerbera. But besides those, she doesn't make any others. And of course,
Sweet Surrender.
Only if you paid money.
No, what I was gonna say though was, he says it doesn't make a big difference for Nero. It literally is the difference between him being beat his ass outside, or getting his ass beat outside the crystal, and being able to touch Urizen. That's a pretty sizable gap in ability.
Again, he also has Ragtime, like the ability to affect time, like.
I mean, yeah, I know, but like we're talking just like on just like in general the breakers, because he's saying
that
ability change.
That and the fact that he, like, look in the cutscene, he broke the crystal with just Red Queen unexceeded with a caliber. So think about for a minute what it would look like if Nero max exceeded his weapon and then added Tomboy, because he has Tomboy before he goes to fight Urizen. He doesn't have it in the. Yes, he does get Tomboy. He does acquire it. Obviously, most of the cutscenes that have Nero with different breaker arms, if they're not a set breaker, they're usually whatever breaker the player has equipped. So I'm not considering that. It's not that that's considered canon. It's that what is considered canon is that he does get Tomboy before he goes to fight Urizen. Like, we know that for a fact. So, I mean, like, if you're going to sit here and tell me it doesn't make a difference, max exceed his Red Queen to the point where he has to hold it with two hands and swing with all force when a basic caliber did that, like, you seriously can't tell me that wouldn't have helped in damaging the crystal? Really?
Maybe that's how you end up breaking through the crystal, just fucking spamming nothing but Tomboy like a fucking basic bitch. And so continuing forward here, but
also I haven't read the English translation. For those of you who are wondering, I have not read the English translation of Before the Nightmare. I've read the novel summaries. Go over the English translation, or at least the Japanese version. I'm going to go back and read even more of that information. And if this goes into a part 3, I will read it before that happens.
Yeah, like how the Blitz is actually the source of Overture.
Yeah. So if I find any more information, I will shed light on that, and that will destroy the credibility of a lot of these statements even more than they already are.
So let's go ahead and continue here since we got let's try and at least get to the character section.
Place. And I guess the government didn't bomb the city. Is there a government?
In light of this incident, the government...
I'm giving world building another wrist slap. So plot-wise...
Okay, so regarding the government bombing the city, and this is where, again, where power scaling becomes kind of a bit more of a problem here. They can't do anything to these demons anymore. Like, the nuke might do something to them, but not the tree.
No. The nuke's not going to do it.
It might kill, like, minor demons, but it's not going to kill the tree. It's not going to stop.
Yeah, not to mention you're going to cover the entire area in radiation. And, you have to understand, you can't just drop maybe carpet bombs, but again, those would be significantly weaker. Like, we don't know what weapons would be legal for this or not. We're not given information.
Well,
assuming, okay, I'll assume the best case scenario, right? I'll assume that they have the full force of the United States military or something equivalent to that. What are they going to do?
Okay, they can probably stop minor demons, but they're not going to stop like any of the mini bosses.
No, because bullets didn't do anything. They didn't have any effect.
Bullets didn't, but fucking multiple tank shells on one guy is probably going to drop like a fucking Impusa.
I mean, maybe, but like the amount of resources that they would have to commit just to killing basic demons is not worth the effort. Not to mention, by the time they finish killing those, more demons will show up that are just stronger. They'll just start sending Impusa queens, which will destroy any ground forces they have. If they try to fight them with air combat, Artemis will just go out there and take out any planes they have. It's not a debate. I don't know if you noticed this, because I'm going to say this again. There are some of the stronger boss demons in this game are stronger than the Gate Guardians. Beowulf's punches are confirmed to hit with the force of miniature supernovas. What does the U.S. military or any government on the planet of the DMC world have to offer that hits with harder than a supernova?
I mean,
can you provide me?
I was like, even if we assume they went for like anti-demon hunters who have like anti-demon material, like fucking burial, there's not going to be enough for them to hold off this onslaught of an army. Yeah,
the more demons can just keep popping through. You realize, like, according to the... I hate to mention this now, but the DMC3 manga confirms that the size of the demon world is infinite. So, presumably, they have enough demons to fill up that space, or at least significant portions of them, because it is confirmed that due to burial statements and, like, descriptions of burial in Balrog, that there are circles and different dimensions of hell that house different demons. So, even if they manage...
There's enough demons to have 2 infinite armies, technically.
Well, even if you manage to kill one type of demon, they're just going to send a type of demon that doesn't get affected. Oh, you're going to drop a nuke? Well, they just start sending fire demons that are affected with the flames of the fire hell. Like, a nuke will literally just be, like, toasty for them. They'll just walk through it. So what's the government going to do?
Demons evolve with radiation to become radioactive demons. More powerful. All right, so
whether or not there's a government, I mean, it's confirmed there's a government. So there's a question.
He already got it. So I'm on 1446 right now.
You spend the beginning levels putzing around, no rush. You basically run into bosses on occasion, 2 of which happen to have Lady and Trish inside.
Okay, so inherently wrong. So yes, you do just run into Goliath, but you actively go to destroy the Qliphoth tree when you meet Lady, so that's not exactly true.
Yeah, no. Artemis is guarding the Qliphoth roots. Don't. It's so not.
You don't just randomly run into her. You're actively going to where she's at, technically.
Yeah, Cavalier, by the way, you don't run into him. Cavalier is having a discussion with Malphus and is being given orders to destroy the Sparta sword. V actively engages Cavalier to stop that from happening because they know the Sparta sword is...
To be fair, and again, like, yes, V starts the fight proactively, but you do just randomly jump into their conversation.
Yeah, but as far as, like, defeating Cavalier tracks down Dante and throws a motorcycle at them. So like even if you want to say V's is just running into Dante's fight with Cavalier is not just running into. Cavalier actively tracks down Dante and the Sparta sword. We don't know by what means, but he does. So
For lulz,
That's-
I guess.
yeah.
Sometimes you're V, sometimes you're Nero, sometimes you're Dante, sometimes you're supposed to be fighting a quipod route or walking through a graveyard. It doesn't really feel like you're supposed to be anywhere, which kind of makes it hard to tell if your adventure is successful at any given point. So you pretty much just run around until it's time to fight Urizen. You fight him like 14 times, and that's the whole game. Wait, what? Hold on. Something else has got to happen in this game. Let's see. They go to fight Urizen, they lose. They fight him again, he's Virgil. Dante fights Virgil, but that's bad. Nero fights Virgil anyway, he wins. They turn into butterflies, and they fly away. The end. Wow, that's
I'm at 540. What about you?
Yeah, I'm at 542.
Whew. So there's a little bit to unpack there.
Okay.
Where do you want to start?
So I guess let's start off with traveling the areas like Graveyard and shit. You realize the whole city is infected, right? Like the whole city infected Resident Evil. The whole city's your fucking battlefield. For them to be in random locations, that's fine because the entire city is technically the arena. But moreover, the quest is going forward. The pieces fall together. It's not hard to understand when you're progressing towards your goal in this game. It practically slaps you in the face with it.
Yeah, they make it very clear that that there's going to be multiple time skips. If your problem is like the time skip shifting and like the characters, I agree they could have formatted that in the missions. But as far as where you're going and the locations, they all have a purpose. V explains we need to cut off his source of supply. He explains it very clearly, and so he sends Nero to take out the Clyphots routes over there, and then V goes and takes out Nihog. He's just like, we have a minor error in speech before we get Urizen. He takes out the parasite. Then he goes to acquire the Devil Sword Sparta. Because he's like, oh, okay, Dante must still be alive. We might be able to get this. Even if he isn't, we need to get the Devil Sword Sparta. There's new information that's being gathered on that's like, we need to do this. And it's like, okay, we have a plan. When I played this game for the first time, even if you want to say, like, I didn't know everything there was to know, I was paying attention to the cutscenes. I was paying attention to what they were saying, and I was completely aware of where everything. I was not, because I was just paying attention to what they said. They just said we have to go here because of this reason. Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah, the rules to follow aren't that hard to work with. I don't really understand what you're saying. Like you have a hard time.
The reason, if you wanted to say it gets a little confusing at like mission 12 when Urizen like teleports out of the Clyphoth room. Yeah, we didn't know he had that ability, but at the same time, he is Virgil's demonic side. So, actually, most of the game in terms of the level design and progression makes perfect sense because there are reasons for why these characters have to take out portions of the map to make Urizen weaker.
All right, so continuing forward, he summarizes how, so the plot is going around. Okay, so this is how he summarizes the plot. Lose to Urizen. Come back, do a bunch of random shit, fight Urizen, don't lose to him, beat Urizen, Virgil comes back, and then they leave. And that's the end of the plot. Okay, that's basically how he summarized it. On a summary level, that's not inherently wrong. But it's the details that matter here and what they do with those sort of basic actions that really matter.
Again, like this is just, you could say that if we just removed all dialogue and all fight scenes, yes, that's what happens. Like, if we just go based off certain portions of the cutscenes, yeah, but like I could do that with pretty much any story and eliminate any valuable information and nuance context between point A to point B. That like, oh, we're just gonna ignore Nero's character arc hitting a pinnacle. We're gonna ignore Dante coming to terms with like what he needs to do with Rebellion to make DSD. We're gonna ignore the fact that that Virgil shows gratitude for the first time of his life. That V's coming to terms with his own mortality. Like, we're gonna ignore all of these things because it very conveniently helps your rudimentary summary of a game that you don't understand. All right, sure.
Yeah, no, very clearly, just too basic of a summary there.
So we're on to characters. All right, we're getting this stuff done. Okay, how far?
Getting the stuff done, Mangler. Are you fucking insane? We're at 2 hours now. This is literally
We
as
are
long as the last video.
We are at 2 hours, and we might. Do you want to stop it after characters finishes?
Well, let's see. Okay, so how long is characters? Characters gonna. Yeah. I think we can stop after characters finishes. That's another 6 minutes.
Okay.
And
I'm just saying, getting through the major points is not taking any all of those questions.
All right, so let's see. Hopefully, how this goes. So we're starting with Nero.
In earnest, I couldn't recognize anyone. All the characters look amazing. The graphics are easily the best I've ever seen, but the heart and soul of these characters is not there. Ugh, okay, here we go. Besides Trish and Lady, really, this game doesn't fuck anyone as hard as
Immediately, just regarding the fucking heart and soul there. I'm not too sure he's correct on that point because Dante's been the same, but we'll see here. So he starts with Nero.
That character arc is over. I'm gonna mention that for the 50 millionth time.
I'm glad I'm not the only one who realized Nero's jaw looks fucking weird in DMC5, or that because Nero had an angular face in DMC4, Dante had a square face. Now Nero has a square jaw, but Virgil still has a more angular face. It's just weird.
Well, the RE recognition system is your answer.
Character, it feels like he's taken a couple of steps backwards. He's kind of petty and arrogant. Maybe it's just brought out more because he only has Nico to talk to, but he's still stuck inside that little brother complex. Like Dante kind of offhandedly calls him dead weight in the intro, and Nero hangs on to it for like the entire rest of the game.
So apparently Nero is petty and arrogant, and he's sort of stuck inside that little brother complex.
Yes.
He is also, what's it called? He's taken a step backwards.
Yep, according to him. Right now he's currently on the deadweight example, because I think this is like what mainly explains it.
Like even in the final confrontation, Nero throws that line back at him for like the 4th time. Dante probably doesn't even remember. He's like, what the fuck is Nero talking about?
Okay, so he's talking about the deadweight. Yeah, well, the deadweight stuff is actually very, very relevant. It's a joke, but the reason why it's such a good joke is because it's true. Like, Nero takes it personally to heart because he has never been able to protect the people he cares about. The first time that happened, Kyrie's parents died. If you read the Deadly Fortune novel, again, you read portions of the summaries of 5, I'm assuming before the English translation dropped, so if you did read the English translation, oh boy, then you should know that in Deadly Fortune novel, Kyrie's parents die, and that basically causes him to become like, he basically becomes like an atheist. He completely abandons any like belief in a god or in Sparta at all because he can't rationalize the thought that such good people like Kyrie's parents would have died or that a god would have let that happen. This is literally what it's explained to be in the Deadly Fortune novels, like in its summaries as well. It's not said verbatim, but it's basically summarized from someone who did and read the translations as well. And if you read it in some of the summary in just its English translation, which is pretty horrible, it still says this anyway. So there's that. There's the fact that he is almost unable to protect Kyrie in the Midas Forest 1 month before the events of DMC4, which you can read if you just read the instruction manual of DMC4. It's explained and referenced in DMC4 when he transforms for the first time that he feels helpless because he's literally like fucking dying when he DTs. He feels like he's going to lose Kyrie multiple times throughout the game, and then this ends up coming to pass because she ends up molding into the savior, and Kratos also dies. So literally between like all of the events, all the information and lore we have on DMC4, he has lost 2 of his foster parents. Basically the brother / the general like boss that he looks up to that's also his like role model. He's dead, and his girlfriend almost dies multiple times back to back, and he lives on a sheltered society that pilfers him religion. And the one guy that shows up that ends up becoming like his new role model / father figure, Dante, basically tells him he's dead weight and he can't do anything.
Well, it's not basically, he called him dead weight.
Yeah, no. he flat out calls him dead weight and tells him he's useless. And Nero is here on a quest of revenge, not just to have a little bit of a source of independence, because he got his arm cut off by somebody, and this is something that he says he's not going to take lying down.
Well, maybe he should have thought about that before he got his arm cut off. Maybe he shouldn't have fucking gone.
So to say that it's like, oh, he's holding on to it, that's a bit childish, that's a bit arrogant. It's essential to his character arc. It's essential to who he is as a person. He has never had an opportunity to tell life to fucking him in the face. And now he finally has an opportunity to do that by beating the shit out of Virgil and by telling Dante to fuck off while he solves this problem. Like, that's his way of handling things, and he handles it spectacularly. At the same time, he also...
Though, that he does make up the fucking joke that, like, Dante doesn't even probably remember that shit.
Yeah, no. Dante says it offhand because he just wants Nero to get out of the room. That's it. He cares about Nero. He doesn't want Nero to die. He just needs something to get him out of it.
Yeah. Serious?
Alright, so let me continue a bit further here, because he does explain a bit further why he thinks the way he does.
I'm dead weight?
I'll show you dead weight.
What doesn't work for Nero for me?
Yeah, no, he mentions it like 4 times. But it is kind of funny. But the reason why the dead weight comes, you don't start to see it so much when he mentions it the first time, when it's like, why don't you sit this one out? Oh, and let you call me dead weight again? No thanks. When he confirms that he's his father, when they're having that emotional scene, he's just like, what? So you can call me dead weight again? That's not it. What is it then? Like, they're screaming to each other. Like, this is incredibly important to Nero. He's not going to let this go anymore.
Dead weight.
He's very similar to Virgil in that they're both very insecure about their ability to protect the things that they care about, and this is being brought out in this cutscene. Dead weight.
I'm not Rick.
Dead weight is simply the straw that sort of like it's sort of the spark that lights the fire. It lights the fire in his insecurities. That's just simply the comment. If it wasn't dead weight, then it would have been another. Like.
Alright, so continue here because he does go to DMC Fornio.
In Devil May Cry 4, he seemed to be this kind, thoughtful, angry kid. There's a lot of emotion going on with Nero, and a lot of heart. But now he's just kind of flattened out into a stock hero with a bad attitude archetype that's honestly not as interesting to me. It also doesn't help that Devil May Cry 5 makes Nero really unlikable. Innocent and bite.
He refers to so he says, are you at what's it called? 706? 706?
I already passed that point, but yeah, I think you're going to reference the reboot clip, right?
So yeah, he pulls up the DMC where he basically says Nero had a lot of emotion in 4, and he was an angry kid that was like pretty scared, and it just feels like he's like a stock character with what's it called? He's just kind of flattened out into a stock hero with a bad attitude.
Yeah. Sounds about right.
I mean, I literally just went over. Again, this is without even regarding the fact that Fortuna is the place where he lives, and it's getting destroyed, and he has to defend people who he grew up with and who he cares about. I didn't even mention that because I thought that would be obvious. So yeah, it makes sense why that, and as a teenager, he's freaking out. Whereas 5 years later, he's had more time to mature, to relax, to calm down, and Kyrie is not in the battlefield getting pot shots thrown at her, okay? She's not getting abducted. She's completely safe. He's had time to think about Kratos' death. He's not in Fortuna away from his home. All of the conditions that would make him emotionally erratic are gone, except for his insecurities about how he feels about said events that occurred in those conditions. That's why he acts differently in this game.
Alright, so fair enough. Let's continue.
Bystanders are getting harpooned.
Okay, so yeah, regarding Nero caring about people, I do have to agree with that sentiment, because if you read the Deadly Fortune novel, he does care about the people who even, like, who disliked him. He does feel bad and does care about what happens to them, like when he finds out they were experimented on. And he brings up the scene where the civilians are dying. I'll let him speak.
By praying mantises and shit, and Nero is still pissed off about that dead weight thing.
Hang on a minute.
Okay, to be fair, V kind of holds him back.
So there is a point where he says, "Oh, soldiers. Well, actually, he says, "I think you need a hug, but you're not going to get one." He's referencing the fact that he doesn't. And
Mangler, could you repeat that again? Because you cut out.
so, he said he makes fun of wounded soldiers. Well, what he says, as the dialogue you indicated on the screen, looks like you need a hug, but you're not going to get one from me. And in that scene, it's also being shown he doesn't have an arm. Usually when you hug people, you hug them with both your arms, one of which he doesn't have. So
Mangler,
it's a joke.
You fucking ableist. People with one arm can give hugs too.
Well, I mean, the joke is that, in spite of my condition, I can't show you this kind of sympathy. It's also the fact that the guy just watched all of his comrades just get killed. Like, what is?
I mean, no matter how you slice it, it's a dick move, technically. Now, what's interesting to note there is that Crew Cuts, or whatever the fuck his name is, he doesn't really care about that. He still fucking tells Nero, "Hey, get the fuck out of there! You're gonna fucking die." So at the very least, if it was meant to be like an insult, Crew Cut didn't seem to fucking care.
He tramples through the dried husks of men, women, and children. Well, only if you actually control his player and force him to do so.
I have to say, though, the fact that there's not a single line of dialogue where Nero criticizes his own actions there seems like really fucking weird to me. Well, I said this when the fucking demo came out, but the fact that you can do this with no repercussions honestly surprised me.
Yeah, but again, it's not mandatory that he walks through their bodies. It's never shown that he's actually doing that. So
yeah, but you would think Capcom would have put a voice line there saying like what the fuck is wrong with me, or I need to be more careful, like something to say like that he at least respects the dead people around him. Granted, I don't care; they're already dead. But go.
I didn't respond to the him caring about, because DMC5 makes it clear even at the beginning that he cares about, he refers to them as a vagrant, as someone who when Virgil comes by, he offers him something to eat because he thinks he's a hobo. Like, they run an orphanage, they're trying to take care of people in Fortuna. So yeah, normally if it were like economic circumstance or something that was like something that he could prevent, he would probably try to save those people, as he literally tries to do. But V says there's nothing we can do for them, and V is right.
He does specify that he does bring that up, saying that you could say that Nero fucking Nero was gonna go help them, and V stops him. But personally, the context of that scene for me, and given the fact that he fucking pushes Morrison aside later with his stub arm, I don't think that was Nero going back for the civilians. That was Nero wanting to go back to fight Urizen again.
No, V specifically says there's nothing we, and he gets upset about that. If you watch the cutscene, it's.
All right, I'll take your word for it for now. But if anyone who's watching this later on wants to,
even if so, he still would have gone right through their path and destroyed the tentacles, so that inadvertently would have fell.
I've always said about that cutscene, there's nothing stopping V and Nero from stopping the tentacles there, at least to help the civilians escape real fast.
Again,
now, V, I understand. V has to conserve his energy. Nero's being Nero.
But again, you have to understand that Nero trusts V, because V is the guy that got them this job, and he was right about literally what they said so far. So he has good reason to believe V's know what he's talking about. For whatever reason, he could think that Urizen is monitoring the area. Whatever the case, because the same tentacles appeared in their room. So he could be under the impression that Urizen has direct control of them.
It's kind of ironic that Nero's best friend is his fucking dad. What a good relationship they have.
Yeah, so either way, he has reason to believe that V knows, and it still bothers him that he can't protect those people. So even if you want to have, even if you're like, I've said before, the DMC crew doesn't care. Nero is an exception to that. He does care. He has been raised to care about other people.
Kind of.
No, he does. He does. Dude.
Again,
before the nightmare visions of V, he's taking people in an orphanage and giving food to the homeless.
In comparison to Virgil and Dante, he cares more, but he still ultimately doesn't care. Or at the
He's
very
still
least,
what?
In comparison to Virgil and Dante, he cares more, but he still ultimately doesn't really care outside of his own community. Now, we can talk about that in more detail later, but let's try and get through to the 20-minute mark. Let's try and get through the character section here.
Husks of men, women, and children. He doesn't care if Dante's alive or dead.
If Dante's alive.
Doesn't care if Dante's alive or dead. It's not that he doesn't care. It's that he's being realistic. If Dante's alive, okay, you help him. If he's dead, you still have a
Yeah,
problem
well,
dealing with.
how is I had a problem with that when I watched this the first time. It was like, if he's alive, we'll save him. Okay, if he's not, we don't. Yeah, if he's not dead, we won't save him because you can't save him if he's dead.
Yeah, no, this one seemed like a pretty easy, like, no-brainer. Yeah, right. Good priorities, Nero. But apparently apparently he's supposed to break down crying, I guess, or something.
It doesn't showcase what he feels like in DMZ4 because, like, again, he's a little bit more naive in 4. He thinks he can save everybody. And he needs to realize that that's not true. Kratos' death taught him that he needs to be more powerful and prepared if he's prepared to protect anyone.
If he had summoned swords, he could have saved Kratos.
If he had Kyrie, he could have saved Kratos.
Kyrie just knew what she had to.
Yep.
Alright, so let's continue.
I will save him. If not, we don't.
The game just does not.
He's dumbed
showcase
down,
what makes
except that
Nero
he's
such a
not,
compelling
because this is
character.
where his character
He's
arc
dumbed down,
peaks.
and it really skews what the game is supposed to be about. It's pretty clear that Nero is favored as the main character over Dante, again. But when you look to Nero for the game's message, I keep thinking, what's his arc? What is Nero's story? He started the
I
game
think
wanting to
his
protect
question peaks at like 1805.
Yeah, he's basically asking what is Nero's arc, or what is Nero's story.
Great, because I've been talking about that for the last like 5, 6 or 7 claims.
I'm not gonna let you fucking repeat the entire thing again.
Yeah, so for anyone who's curious, just go back and look at the last
You've already
2.
heard it, like, at some point. For anyone who watches this in the future, timestamp one of Mangler's fucking explanations for Nero's arc. Just for people in the future to go
Insecurities,
back.
just brief summary, insecurities and stuff like that. Insecurities, lack of being able to protect people, yada yada yada.
Alright,
Like,
great. Good work.
people and ends the game still wanting to protect people.
Okay, so regarding the ending section here, because he's saying that Nero starts off wanting to help people and ends up wanting to help people. There can be a character arc without the main fucking thing changing for a character.
yeah, it just means no. What's
Fucking end up
changed?
somewhere else.
What's changed is that Nero has proven to himself that he can protect people. He's not trying to convince other people that he can do it. He's trying to convince himself. He's
also got his arm
insecure
back.
about that. Yeah. Well, that too. We got a little surprise for Kyrie.
Alright, so
And so, yeah, it's not conviction for other people. He wants to convince himself.
Hey, so which one is the reunion scene? Is that when Nero fucking starts fucking flying towards them, or what's reunion?
I'm not sure what he's referring to.
Well, because he's referring to the cutscene reunion, the case study. So is reunion? Which one's
I think
reunion?
that's when he shows up to stop Dante and Virgil.
Okay, yeah. So because I won't touch on it, so he's gonna continue.
A lot of praise for the "I'm not letting you die" scene at the end, but for me, that's the biggest example of how little they could do with the character. The line is so forced and comes completely.
I'm gonna let him finish, but he's talking about the scene about "I'm not letting you die." So hang on.
Like they just needed something singular for him to say to make all the themes come together. But where it worked in Devil May Cry 3 with Screaming Souls, and Devil May Cry 1 with Devils Never Cry, here it just feels hollow. I mean, hey, if he's not screaming Kyrie's name, is he even really Nero? Come on.
Kyrie, get back inside now!
Okay.
I will say that more.
Okay, so we're done with Nero's thing. I've never heard someone say that scene seemed hollow. That's like, of all the criticisms, that seems like the one I don't think I ever would have heard prior to this video.
Yeah, like I don't know if you noticed this, but when Kratos dies in 4, Nero is horrified. He's literally like reaching out to save him, but he can't reach him. Like Kratos is everything to him. Like Kratos is literally his stepbrother. He grew up with Kratos, and he can't. He just gets to watch him die. So when he says, "I couldn't save Kratos," it's highlighting his insecurity about the fact that he was unable to protect something he cared about, and now he's not going to let that happen again. But it isn't, like I said, it's not a conviction to other people. It's a conviction. It's a promise to himself, and he's going to fulfill it. I don't know how you could say that feels hollow.
I think the reason he's saying it feels hollow is because the main build-up behind that sort of mentality is there, but the actual objective isn't. Because he seems to be very objective focused, like this is how it has to be. So let's continue forward.
I mean, the end result speaks for itself, so... It's not forced, by the way. It's not forced at all.
Don't worry, Mangler. I'm pretty sure we can talk about during the case study.
Is fine. A Morrison character who's known Dante since he was young.
Okay,
Also
I'm just
poking-
gonna skip over Morrison because there's really nothing he really says here other than Morrison like doesn't really do much of anything. So I'm
Yeah, no. Morrison fulfilled his role. He's an information. You got a job to do. Good job, Morrison. You did your job. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah,
Like,
so
no problem.
I'm just gonna skip near like a bit further. I'm at 1855 right now.
And his presence doesn't elucidate anything about the character that we don't already know. The only reason he seems to be in the game is to tease a DLC.
Well, as far as him not having any substantive relationship about Dante, I will say again, you are expected to read the novels and mangas in some order. DMC 1 and DMC 2, you're not expected to read as far as the as far as the novels.
Yeah.
Like, or at least I could say you're expected to read them, but you don't have to, because 2's novel is only relevant if you want to know how Dante manages to get to the museum. And that's it.
Yeah.
Because Lucia throws a knife in through his office and plants a dagger with like a map.
Okay.
1 isn't relevant in the slightest and actually causes massive inconsistencies.
Mangler, we're almost there. It's okay. We're almost to 20 minute
so-
mark. Just leave it. We're almost there. 2 hours in.
It
We're almost
may
there.
never happen. And to call my two beautiful ladies a couple of crazy bitches.
I'm just gonna ignore the Lady and Trish shit. Because that is kind of funny, but like... Yeah, to think that Dante wouldn't call Lady and Trish crazy bitches when they've spent money on his wallet.
Like I legitimately thought I was.
Like, keep
gonna
going.
get in
I gotta check my dogs.
trouble
Hang
for
on.
calling them pizza sluts in my first video, but apparently I was just ahead of the fucking game. Which, all right, we're gonna talk about Lady and Trish now. Notice that I can put these two in the same title. These are not two separate characters. These are two carbon copy, bimbo ass pizza slut bitches.
Well, I will say I kind of agree that Lady and Trish were unnecessary for this game. Again, if you see my criticisms of DMC5, which I did last year, I would have preferred that Matier and Lucia would have taken their place. Just because Lady and Trish have no reason to be here, really. If you're just gonna put two carbon copy, like two females in here, why not the ones we would like to see again? You know, from the original game, fix their character up, have more interactions there. But continuing.
That spend the entire game naked, covered in goo, or running away. I told you they were gonna do this to them.
I'm back. What happened?
So he's talking about Lady and Trish right now. Currently at 1951. Regarding Lady and Trish running away, they're literally not useful in this situation. If you want to talk about Nero being dead weight, what the fuck do you think Lady is? So when he criticizes them running away and shit, what else are they supposed to do? Now I will say, Lady was very unfairly treated in this game. In comparison, a lot of the lines that went to Trish should have gone to Lady, especially revolving around Virgil. Because Trish never met Virgil. Lady met Virgil. Lady should have had the Virgil lines, not Trish. But continuing forward here.
I just didn't think it'd be this bad. These are not strong women. These are not intelligent or interesting women.
Okay, so according to him, they're not strong, intelligent, or interesting women. Well, you're technically right. They're not strong. They get destroyed by Urizen, so I guess you're not wrong there.
Strong in comparison to what they're fighting, but to say they're not strong in general, boy, Lady would break your fucking spine in 2 seconds. Like, don't even...
Regarding intelligence, they're out of their depth here. And to be fair, everyone but Virgil's out of their depth here, so that's not really a criticism you can just levy at Lady and Trish. Dante doesn't know what the fuck the Clifod tree is. No one does except for V, because he's Virgil! And interesting. I don't really know how to respond to interesting.
Like, if you want to say interesting, Lady, as far as things that catch your eye, Lady is referred to religiously as like in the Reddit and subreddit, every Discord, everywhere I go, as the best girl. So,
I think just referencing DMC5 though, like DMC5's portrayal is what he's focusing on. Because Lady was best girl since DMC4, or well 3, I guess if you want to get technical. But no, what I was over here thinking to myself is what qualifies as interesting? Like, she has enough money to buy a fucking rocket launcher. She can carry around a rocket launcher. Like, What do you want from interesting here? I'm not too
She's
sure.
known as the walking arsenal.
Yeah, because he doesn't really fucking offer any sort of like counterpoint to this one, if I remember correctly. But let's see if he does.
These are the worst possible versions of these characters.
Regarding these being the worst possible versions of these two characters, I'm going to be honest here. I kind of agree with that sentiment. I think DMC4 is where they peaked.
Well, no, they did even less than 4.
But here's the thing. In 4, they had a lot more flavor to them in terms of like their personality. They weren't there for a lot. Well, Trish more than Lady. But for what they were there for, it was way more impressionable than DMC5's appearances were.
Yeah,
Granted,
no, Lady's
again,
not even in 4. She just shows up to get the job, and then she shows up later.
And I would
That's
argue
it.
that those couple of scenes with Lady, like in the special edition and such, are better than most of her in DMC5.
Nah, I wouldn't make that.
Dude, DMC5 treated Lady like garbage.
I mean, again, she ends up becoming the host for Artemis, which guards the Qliphoth. Literally prevents them from being able to accomplish their goal. I'd say that's a meaningful inclusion. Even if it's against the heroes, or at least the protagonist's aim, she does contribute to the story being developed.
Artemis is Artemis. You don't attribute Artemis's actions to Lady.
Lady is the host of Artemis.
But Urizen's the one who stuck her in the suit.
It doesn't matter, though.
You wouldn't attribute that to fucking Lady. You would attribute that to Urizen.
No, I would attribute it to Lady because Lady is the host of...
But Urizen's the one... Okay, so Trish brings Artemis to begin with. It's not even Lady who brings Artemis.
No, okay,
Trish
so
brings Artemis,
if Urizen was remotely controlling... No. If Urizen was remotely controlling Lady, then I would attribute that to Urizen, but he's not.
But Lady's not controlling Artemis either. She's just like the host. Like, she's just keeping Artemis alive.
Again, she's the thing... Yeah, I know. That's why she contributes to the actions.
Why wouldn't you attribute just that to Artemis if Lady's only there as a power source?
Because Artemis can't exist without Lady inside of it, or at least a human, and that human happens to be Lady.
Okay, but if any human could do it, assuming...
Yeah, no, I would attribute it to that person. That's what I'm saying.
So what do you attribute to Artemis? Artemis is a sentient creature at this game.
I would attribute Artemis's conclusion to the same thing that Lady's contributing to, guarding Tree and fighting Nero.
Okay, but then that's Artemis... Okay, we're arguing semantics here.
They both coexist to fulfill the same purpose.
Yeah, but when you're talking about fucking Venom, you talk about Venom. You don't mention the host Venom's in, unless you're talking about Eddie Brock. But even then, you still... No, it's the same thing. Different. But we'll let the audience decide when they end up watching this for themselves, because we'll see what they say on this one. Fair enough. Personally, I think DMC4 is where they peaked after DMC3, because obviously...
I can understand if you want to say they have more personality in the cutscenes. I would agree to that. I think they have better personality in how they're portrayed.
They just have more agency in the other games than they do in 5. Now, to be fair...
I mean, Lady doesn't do anything in 4. Well,
she gives Dante the job. That's more than she does in 5.
I mean, stopping Nero from destroying the Qliphoth roots arguably is pretty important because Urizen would have become even.
So we're gonna. Well, she didn't succeed for one thing, so she failed. But if we assume that, but again, yeah.
Yeah, but if she wasn't there at all, I'm saying like
nothing would have changed because Nero still would destroy the tree. But she was only there to tease Artemis as a weapon and not give it to me.
I mean, if I were to mention this for Trish, perhaps, but Trish almost beat again, Trish... I don't want to say Trish almost beat V, but V was exhausted after fighting Trish.
Trish was literally running away! Well, or no. Okay, no, Kevin or Edge... Again, I don't think you can attribute the Angelo's actions to the character, but...
Even when the Angelo is powered by Trish? Trish is the one that gives it the power.
But Trish isn't the one who's fighting. The Angelo is.
It doesn't matter, though, because the Angelo wouldn't be able to fight V without Trish.
I'll go ahead and let the audience decide on this one. I feel like you should consider those two things separate. But we'll see what the audience says when they get to this point.
Trish, at the very least, pretends to be important by reciting exposition that V has already told her because she's dumb.
What's next?
Okay, so I'm on 2010. He's complaining about Trish not knowing anything, but I've already covered and we agreed they don't know shit about this situation. Virgil's the only one who knows, so you can't really fault Trish for not knowing anything when no one else knows about the situation at hand.
Yeah.
Doesn't know anything anyway, but oh my god, what they do to Lady in this game. Now, I'm not trying to tout any kind of feminist agenda here, which is annoying that I have to preface that.
Okay, so at 2020 he talks about not touting the feminist agenda. I don't know
He says
Again-
he has to preface that, but I don't think you really have to as long as
No,
you
you don't. Like, having female inclusion is being feminist. I mean, otherwise you just don't feminist. But we're not going to get into that.
I'll say no on streams. That's a conversation off the stream. But no, I
Sure.
don't think you have. If you're talking about like fucking female characters in the video game, I doubt you have to fucking sit down and be like, oh well, you know, I'm not trying to be a feminist or anything. Except maybe if a new character comes along that just beats Dante and is a girl, like maybe then you could argue that, but not for established characters. I don't think you have to preface that.
Yeah, no, like Lady is one of like a fan favorite character. Like I get that. Like Trish, even a lot of people still like Trish. A lot of people love Nico in this game. Like even if you dislike Nico, like her I know. Her personality is still pretty like I don't want to I mean her personality is pretty refreshing. I like having like the brother sister vibe that she brings. But he comes to a completely different conclusion of her.
Yeah, a brother sister vibe, and this time it's not going to end in sex. What a healthy relationship.
He disagrees with you.
What?
He disagrees with you. Hang on. Just go to like 20 past 20:57.
Okay, so hang on. Hang on. It's because there's someone talking on my phone right now. And I'm just making sure it's not for me. All right, so I'm gonna let play out.
Every single last one of Devil May Cry 5's women characters suck, except maybe Malphas. They're either bending over, getting pushed off screen like poor Kyrie, or given a fate worse than death, abandoned. In the Devil May Cry light novel, like my thick babe Lucia, we finally found you.
Gotta jump up to like 221. The conspiracy theories are jumping pretty hot.
Oh, how he's talking about how all the girls get either are bending over, which ironically enough...
No, 21. My bad.
21. All right, so hang on. Let me finish, because he's talking about Lucia right now, how he's kind of annoyed Lucia got relegated to the novel, and I agree, she should have been in the fucking game. Capcom Special Edition, bring back Lucia, she has ice powers, work with that.
So sorry. Nico. I really tried to...
Yeah, it's just my problem with some of these points is that, like, the reason why I can't agree with the broader point that he's trying to address with how the female characters in DMC5 are treated, like, they don't really come full circle with it, like you or I could agree with.
So I'm at 2047 right now. I'm gonna let him talk about Nico, and you said at 2021 is when it starts being like conspiracy theory-ish.
Yeah, 2020.
Yeah, so we'll get there like real quick.
Oh, Nico is annoying the whole time. I don't understand people that defend this.
I'm not going to elaborate on his Nico opinions because Nico is either hit or miss. So I'm just going to let him speak for himself, but I'm not really going to elaborate here because you either like Nico or you don't like Nico. There's no in between here.
Character. She's terrible and makes me so mad. She's kind of like that annoying friend in high school who embarrasses you in front of your cool friends, but like ramped up to 11. She ruins every scene she's in and finds the rudest, most childish way to communicate every line.
You know I got you covered, asshole. Yeah. Keep your panties on.
Will you stop it? Look at you. You're nobody's crying, all right?
And, alright, I'm just gonna dive into this one. Is she banging Nero? Like, they try to play off this coy lesbian thing, but I don't buy it. They're always hanging out in the van as she bends over to pick up a new hand. Like, there's no way something's not happening here. Is she in love with him? Like, these aren't bad questions.
Okay, so I got through to the conspiracy theory part.
Yeah. So he goes on a whole spiel. It's just like, is she in love with him? I'm like, these aren't bad questions. These are bad questions.
I was gonna say,
did you play DMC4?
These are bad questions.
Did you play DMC4? I need to know because Kyrie is Nero's girlfriend. In case you may have missed it, he's living in the same house with her.
The ultimate plot twist, Mangler, is that Kyrie is actually a cuckold. The legendary plot twist.
The sweet surrender, which he uses, like, oh, it must be. Except that if you read the sweet surrender's description, it says that Nero has to be gentle while he's handling Kyrie.
Don't give him ideas, Mangler. Stop it. Okay, so regarding the situation here, so he says they're always spending time together.
And I gotta say, this is one of the things I kind of hate about modern like storytelling in general, and I suffer from this. It is really hard for me now to picture just a boy and a girl just being friends in a fictional story.
Yeah, shipping happens way too much.
Yeah,
and
it's
the
gotten
implications.
so fucking bad that it is really hard for me now to see just a platonic relationship anymore between like fictional characters. It's fucking everywhere. That shit gets everywhere.
I mean, granted, ships are great. It's just like sometimes it is kind of hard to tell. But I don't know how you could make this mistake with Nico and Nero. Like, I can understand if you were like, "Oh, is Nico on to Lady?" But not on to Nero.
He mentions like they try and play it off with like some softcore like lesbian implications is what he's saying there.
And it's just like, oh well, those lesbian implications are way more credible. Assuming Nero would get with anybody but Kyrie, like, get out of here.
I mean, Kyrie would castrate him. But no, yeah. So I can kind of understand where he's coming from because they are really close. But I think it's more of a product of the times than it is like a valid criticism because that's how we've kind of been like socially set up now to look at these sorts of situations when it comes to fiction. I don't want to say real life. I don't want to get too political or social here, but I think we can all agree that shipping has infected every part of fictional media at this point.
I mean, it's always been there. It's just like
it's become
just
far more prevalent with the introduction of the internet culture.
Whatever. Well, we're now at around
the
reunion scene, case study, and I think that might be a
this one we're
good
gonna
time
cut
to cut
off.
off the video.
But I want him to finish his last thing about Nico here.
Shit, I'd be calling him out too, but maybe I'm wrong. Could be that he's already taken care of business all on his own.
Catch my meaning?
Okay, before we keep going, I'm just gonna use this one scene as my case study for everything that's wrong with the way DMC5 treats its characters. I mean, as for bringing everyone together, this has got to be the most embarrassing sequence I've...
Okay, so I guess Reunion is the case. I guess Reunion is the scene where before they go into the Clyflaw tree, because he says he's going to use this scene, and he starts showing the scene where they all meet up. So we're going to go ahead and leave it there. But I guess that's the scene he's going to be using as his case study for everything wrong in DMC5. And to be fair, it is the right scene to choose. If you were to pick a scene that encapsulates a lot of interactions with characters and a lot of problems with characters, it would be Reunion. Would be your best case study. I'm not
I would
saying
say,
it's bad, but
I would
be the
say
scene.
that's not a bad scene, but the best scene to do it would probably be V explaining stuff to Trish, because where that happens in the story kills a massive amount of momentum for the Virgil reveal. Like, the Virgil reveal is an amazing scene, but like V not being revealed as Virgil for like half the game is pretty good, and then he's just like, Trish, I will tell you the story of my birth, and it's like, oh no.
And I am 2 days old.
Just starts reading William Blake. Yeah.
I do agree that like they did a good job keeping it a secret and shit, and they did do a good build up for it. But I suspect he's going to be talking about character interactions and how story is told here. He might go into pacing, but I think the scene you're referring to really focuses more on pacing than anything else. So, not the worst scene to choose, but I would have thought he would have chosen perhaps the scene with Dante and Virgil talking with Nero. I think he would have chosen those scenes more specifically, but, you know, to each their own here. So, yeah.
Wait, this is a good time to cut this off.
Yeah, so with that said, everybody, thank you guys for your time as always. Have a nice day. I'll see you guys on the next stream or video.